All right. John, you're here, right?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Hi, John.
Hey, John.
How you doing, Sean?
So, just for the record, John is on by phone, so if we do take votes, we just take voice votes. So, I'll just direct your attention really quickly to the agenda. We do have outstanding meeting minutes, but we're not going to get to that tonight. Reserve fund stands at $35,000. Public forum. Is there anyone here to talk about anything not on the agenda?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'll introduce myself, Kathy Keith, Assistant Town Administrator. So I wanted to direct a couple of questions to Rosemary Conley.
Just a point, is this from an email that we had earlier?
No,
Okay.
nope. So I
Okay.
just want to refer.
I would ask that if you have individual things for meetings, those are to one person.
Well, let
Let
her make-
Executive session can be what it's done if it's an individual thing, but if it's to the
Right.
committee, you could ask the committee.
Okay, so sure. So I just want to direct your attention to a meeting recording session from the meeting you folks
Sure.
held January 30th of 2024.
I don't have that in front of me.
Let me just listen to her conversation and then we'll make a determination. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so, I think, I hope I'm gonna, paraphrase this appropriately, but I think I heard Mrs. Conley say that,
Chair?
National Grid was a Fortune 500 company and given a $1.5 million tax break. So I just wanted to speak to that.
I
Okay.
believe
Well,
that
if
the
it's
new
on-
growth, that was in a meeting with Frank Lyman, stated that the new growth from that year was from a National Grid in the past that has happened. So Frank Lyman had stated it.
Line them.
Lynham, excuse me,
Yeah.
had stated that, and I could send you the new growth, and I can circle it, and it was a year over the course of 2 years.
Yep.
It was we could circle that. So, I will send that to you if you'd like
So,
to.
and I know you've made the same, comment at the Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Yeah.
So I just want to have a chance, and I've prepared something in writing. So if I may,
Well, it's not on the agenda,
Yeah.
so I would suggest if you want to talk about this offline with Rosemary,
Okay.
and just want to email it to the committee, I'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes, I did ask Kathy to set a meeting up with me, and I got nothing back. I said if we could meet.
So it would be the best way to address the issue rather than just
Particularly because it's.
putting it on
Exactly.
under public forum. I
Okay.
think we probably have better information for you. I
Yeah,
would
we'll
think.
pull that together. And you know something? I'll probably see if I can get someone from the assessors put in, because that way,
from the assessor's office?
yes, from the assessor's office, that way we can also discuss the 504s in general, like.
So Rosemary,
what
we're going to have this conversation offline, okay? So your information is now part of the record,
Okay,
and we will follow up with it in our next meeting.
thank you.
Okay. you're
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
All right, does anybody else have anything that we'd like to bring up under public forum? Okay, seeing none. Just continue and review the agenda. So, reserve fund transfer for the library. Welcome. David Aronson is here from the library to give us a review on the copies are in front of you for a request for the reserve fund transfer. Also on a new business, the fiscal 25 warrant, we do have a draft warrant in front of us here that was provided by the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen. So we do have Mary Beth here to present that. We can get just a quick review. It gets us a little ahead of the schedule. So old business, we have our standing subcommittee reports and other business communications. We have one communication from the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, and then any updates from the town administrator. So you can see we have, tonight's meeting is the fourth of four meetings ahead of us. We have a meeting on the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd, which we'll have to conclude our recommendations for the warrant and Article 2. Doesn't give us a lot of time, because May 6th, as you can see, is our annual town meeting. So that's a review of the agenda. So I would invite David to come up and make your presentation. So I'm going to read, just for John Noon's benefit, this was in the mailbox. It did not come electronically. So this is a request for the for transfer from the reserve fund. It's dated March 28th, 24. And the amount requested is $11,500, and it's to be transferred to library utilities. The present balance in that appropriation is $9,402.51. And it's under item number 4 on the form. The amount requested will be used for give specific purpose. And it is the requested amount will be used to pay remaining fiscal 2024 utilities expenses. And then number 5, this expenditure is extraordinary and or unforeseen for the following reasons. And the answer, the library HVAC systems were not working properly and required a number of repairs. And it's signed by the director of the library. And so the information now will come from
Yes.
David?
So I think all my flyers with the name of the table.
Just all the extras.
Okay, so I guess we have a few.
Do I have one?
Could you pass me the whole packet?
I can pass it to you, I think.
It looks like this.
You got it.
Yeah, you got it. It's only,
Oh, I do.
it's only one more.
I got it from both.
All right.
So basically, the situation was that we had a kind of rolling series of HVAC-related issues at the library, starting during the summer and continuing through the fall, that required a series of repairs and also caused us to use quite a bit more energy than we have in years past. Now, obviously, I understand that there are variations year to year, but we're looking at a discrepancy in the range of $3,500 over 6 months, which to me is probably significant. The issues first came to light when we discovered there was a leak in the baseboard heating system. It sounded like the ocean in the break room. And we had a few leaks in there. Those had to be repaired, so that was the first thing. Then, as many of you know, the library was painted last year on a capital request. One of the painters actually noticed that one of the air conditioning condensers was sparking. It turned out that they were wired improperly, and they had to be rewired. So that was a second expense. We then were having ongoing problems with regulating the heat in the building. So it was getting up to 78 degrees on different days or whatever. We just couldn't seem to get it to cool down. So we had to call in someone to reprogram and repair the air conditioning system. There were a couple of parts, and then it all had to be reprogrammed because that wasn't right. And then the final issue that was not discovered and repaired until the end of November was that the building has 3 forced hot water zones. The main zone is in the main area of the building. It has electrically actuated valves, and that valve was stuck on. So my guess is that that's probably the reason why, A, we were having so much trouble regulating the temperature, and B, why the bills were so high, because I would say that the heat was running all summer and the air conditioning was running full blast to overcome the heat. I will just say that Todd was just fabulous. Facilities director Todd Ducudo and I spent a lot of time on the phone. He spent a ton of time, trying to diagnose it and calling in different people. I think we got great work from the different vendors, and I think their prices were reasonable. It just obviously became a rather substantial expense. And I'm pleased to say that, subsequent to that, the bills do seem as though they're a little more in line with what we've experienced in years past. So that's kind of the story on that. And so as a result, it has caused a budget problem. I do anticipate that we will have some salary funds, probably in the order of $9,000 or $10,000 that we are going to be applying to this, because currently the line is actually overdrawn. The amount of money that I anticipate we're going to have will probably cover that. Based on my estimates from last year's utility bills, spring utility bills from February on, those totaled just short of $11,000. So I figure around $11,500 should give us a little bit of a buffer. Hopefully the weather's not too crazy, and we will go from there. And hopefully we've gotten to the bottom of the HVAC issues. I'm happy to say we haven't really had any problems since November, and things do seem to be, the temperature does seem to be regulated properly, which was certainly not the case then. So that's
Okay,
pretty much
well,
the story.
before we open it up to questions, I just want to make a few points. On the form for a request for a reserve from, transfer from the reserve fund, it does say the request should be made and the transfer voted before any expenditure in excess of appropriation is incurred. So many of these expenses have already been paid.
Yes. It didn't become, the issue of the balance in the account didn't become obvious until, a couple of months ago. And I certainly apologize for not following the process. This is actually the first time I've done one of these, so I was not aware I was not clear at the time whether we were going to have enough salary money as we've had in years past. We did, because we have now filled all of our vacant positions, we don't, in years past we've used unexpended salary appropriations to cover a lot of this, which is not going to be the situation this year. We do have a little bit of money, but we don't have the order of money that we've had in previous budget years to cover the discrepancy.
Okay. And then the second point I just wanted to say is, typically this reserve fund request is brought to the meeting and then it's held over to the next meeting. Mm-hmm. We did get information from you previously about a request for a transfer, but I think from what I recall was related to this. I see one of the line items here is a tree expense.
Yeah.
That's what we were, for myself, I thought that the request from the reserve fund was related to the tree work. No idea what the tree work involved. You imagine you had a tree fall on the building, or?
So we actually had a portion of a tree fall behind the building that sat there for quite a while, and then there was a bunch of work that had to be done when the painters came, and when they were there, it turned out that or when the tree people were there, it turned out that there were a number of dead trees in the building that they recommended taking down before they fell over because they were dead. So this was something that we, was going to be taken care of by other means and was not. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
So that was that.
And then I just want to follow up one thing that when you first made this request, I did suggest that you have a conversation with our town administrator. So. Right. You had a conversation. There are other means to address some of these emergent issues as well, right? I mean, they could spend emergency funds to be. Is there another mechanism for other than getting another line transferred out of his budget?
Emergency funds such as?
For any of these emergent repairs? I mean, would the conversation that he had with you, did you suggest anything other than a line item transfer?
We talked about what money he might have left in his budget at the end of the year to do a line item transfer.
Okay.
We talked about that. Are you referring to ARPA funds or?
No.
Oh.
So, I mean, if it was a matter of, I mean, from past experience with capital emergent repairs, such as the ones that occur at the high school, right? There's been other times where the department is paid for and then requested reimbursement at a later date, right? We've done that before.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Before me, as
Yeah.
town administrator probably.
Okay.
But the funds still have to come from somewhere.
Right.
Within the budget. So
Right.
I wonder where you're meaning. Like if the high school has something in its emergency, they say contact and get the problem done, right?
And then
Safety of the children. And then figure
we
out
put
where
an
it's
item
coming
on the
from.
warrant for reimbursement.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that would be another option, I guess, for, there's a lot of varied parts of this reserve fund transfer request, right? It's not really just one thing, right? So, okay, I just wanted to follow up on where you've been and now that you're here. Kathleen.
I just had a simple question, which is tree work. Does our own DPW not take care of? It's not like the big oak in front of Town Hall, which clearly required something bigger than our DPW. But does the DPW not do routine tree work for all of our town buildings?
Well, I won't get into the specifics of. Well, it didn't happen. Let's put it that way. There was requests were made.
Okay, well then, David, I won't put you on the hot seat. I'll put someone else on the hot seat. Is our DPW expected to help all town buildings with reasonably sized tree issues.
I would think so.
Okay,
I would
David's
absolutely
bill.
think so.
so would I.
Yeah, this is not.
I mean, they help in a lot of other things. I wouldn't see why they.
It's not even the building. This is the land around the building. So I mean, you don't take care of the grounds, do you? Do you mow the lawn? Do you?
No, I haven't done that yet. No.
One of those push ones.
Yes.
Have we got you doing that yet?
I mean,
Not yet.
I do like to joke that I have as part of my library science degree, I did a specialization in facilities, but that's not actually true.
Is your question typically who does do the grounds? I guess.
I mean, I believe that in the past, the DPW
Yeah,
has.
'cause
So why would the grass be your responsibility and not the other responsibility, but not the trees?
Well, I mean, I don't know what work they have done in the past. I will just say that this was a situation that kind of dragged on to a point where it kind of had to get resolved. Let's put it that way.
So you did it because you didn't want the building to be hurt. That's what I was thinking.
Well, I mean, the tree that was in the back had to be removed for them to do the work,
Okay.
because of the painters.
Okay.
And then there was other work that had to be done as part of this capital request. And there was also a question because certainly members of the staff and a few big members of the public had said to me, gee, these trees in the parking lot look a little bit, don't look so good. Maybe somebody should take a look at them. And then when the tree people were there, they said, yeah, those trees are dead. And I figured before a tree fell over, we might be well served to, have them removed. Now, this was a discussion, from what I understand, that had been ongoing between facilities and DPW, but the work had not been completed to that point. So that's.
And in order to do the capital repairs, the trees had to come out of the way.
The trees, I mean, there were trees that were up against the rubbing up against the building and whatever, and that was something that had to be done in order to get the painting work done. So,
And I've noticed a lot of trees around town in my neighborhood just dying off too. And and the storms that we've had, there's been a lot of trees.
yeah, I mean, it was particularly a problem in the back where the larger chunk of tree that fell down, which was probably between 15 and 20 feet long, the access to that part of the building, it does tend to get kind of overgrown between that and the tree. It really made it very difficult. And then, there were some of the trees at the end of the building near where the children's playground is were, touching the building in spots.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something that really needs to be done for certain of those trees on a regular basis.
Yeah, a little regular maintenance type, program. Maybe
And
something.
then it turned out that the bigger tree that was in the parking lot was dead, as was another big tree, and one right in front of the entrance where the picnic table is now. So, so that was the decision that was made.
Okay, so just for John Noon's benefit, because we were just handed this backup sheet, John, just so you know what it's on it, there's a breakdown of expenses for electricity for fiscal 23. There's a breakdown for electricity for fiscal 24. I imagine that's intended to tell you the difference between the two. And then there's also a reference to the gas expenditures for fiscal 23, gas expenditures for 24. And shows you the net increase for both of them. Is that just help me with this math here? How are we
Yes.
getting to 11.5 from this table?
Yeah, so basically the year to date was through. They weren't exactly the same because I got this information from the accountant's office, and these were the bills they had paid to date at that time. So anyway, one is through January billing, at least on the electricity side. Gas is through December billing, and it just the top number, the FY23 YTD, shows the year-to-date expenditure for that, and then 24. So you can see there's a pretty substantial difference. And given that the last piece of the equipment that wasn't replaced, the zone valve, wasn't actually replaced until the end of November, that kind of covers the whole energy use cycle, if you will, because basically we would have been through the whole month of November before the heating system was properly. I mean, clearly by then we were into heating season, but to that point, that whole area of the library was running at all times.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and then it says the current account balances, 2,000 is 672.22, and then for 01/6/10, 2001, imagine one negative 10,000 is
Yeah.
the balance?
Yep.
Okay. So the total between the two of those is a negative 9,000, and how are we getting to 11.5 on your request?
Is that the addition of your total work here plus the 2,500 plus the
Yes.
increase
Yep.
in the utilities?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So if
that's-
you basically take these three right here, add them together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see
You'd
that.
expect some increase in utilities from year to year. So in this, it doesn't take in any account of any increase, like naturally. I mean, it wouldn't be in totally from the misuse. We wouldn't. My electrical bills are more than last year's. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I would say
I would
that.
like.
I mean, yes, I would agree that there is going to be some yearly variation. However, like when you look at the bill for July, and one year is 42.98, and the next year it's 365.36, and there's sort of a consistent discrepancy. I agree. I could see the bill could double in that time, but I don't think it would increase by that much.
Yeah.
That's a huge that.
Yeah.
You know, and I have not. I can pull up. I mean, we could get the bills, and I could see how many therms and kilowatts, which I have not done to date. But just based on that, I kind of say, boy, it seems like we're using a lot of electricity and gas at some point. And then when they said that this valve had been stuck open, all summer.
And actually, if you look at it too, most of this request is the repair and the tree.
Right.
It is.
Balance of it.
And those are certainly, unexpected.
Unforeseen,
Yes,
yeah.
and unforeseen,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the bulk of the rest of it is the gas, which, like you said, it seems like that's the really. Have you noticed any change since then? We're still in winter and it's still cold, but have you seen that decrease? Because
Since the equipment, since all the repairs were done, we haven't had any more problems. I mean, so in terms of the sort of comfort level in the building and the heating system, it seems to be working properly.
Good.
I mean, the bills have definitely seemed to have come down more in line with what you would expect. Acknowledging year-to-year variations in
Yep.
weather and the fact that, the utility rates have definitely gone up. But
But you haven't had two systems fighting against each other.
right, yes. I mean, I think, over the summer we'd have days where it was, 78, 79, and it just was stiflingly hot. And clearly, after the fact, I can see why. I mean, it just, it makes sense if the way the system is set up is there are heating coils in the air handlers that circulate the air conditioning. So if it was pumping out heat, and unfortunately the valve that was broken is in the main area of the building. It would have a significant impact on.
Yep. That's the gas.
Okay, any further questions?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. What building does the facilities cover? Like when it pays for something to be fixed, what building does it cover? Our facilities.
Well, right now,
Budget.
maintenance is part of the budget for the library.
It's
Of the
part. Okay,
building.
you have that separated out.
Are you looking for a motion?
Go ahead.
I would like to move that we transfer $11,500 from the reserve fund to pay for the library utilities shortfall.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Anybody further discussion? Anybody else? Anybody want to chime in? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll go to a voice vote. John Noon. John?
did he fall off?
Nope, still there. We'll start with Ralph.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Rosemary.
I'm going to abstain because we don't have the it wouldn't be the exact from year to year.
Chuck.
Yes.
I vote yes. John, are you there?
Yep.
Are you voting yes or no?
Yeah. I'll go along with it.
Thank you for your wholehearted endorsement.
7-1.
Peer pressure, John.
Okay, all right. We have a motion and a second in the action of the Finance Committee as that the transfer is voted in the sum of $11,500. And 7 members present and voting and signed by the Finance Committee Chair. So you want to take that and bring it to wherever you need to bring it.
I will do that.
All right, should you have any other issues that come up, certainly understand that we're always available for discussion. And if you can in the future have another reserve fund transfer request, if you could forward the backup in advance of the meeting, that's always helpful.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
Excellent.
I have calendars if you'd
All
like
right.
to take one. Just we got a
Lots
bunch of
going
cool
on.
stuff going on, so always like to see members of town committees and
Yep.
at our events. So
Let us hope after town meeting, we are still
Yes,
availing
well,
ourselves of the
yeah.
Do
library.
you, do you want to
Yes.
hand that back?
To the general public.
Couldn't resist, could you?
there you go. Thank you.
All right, thank you again.
Thanks, Sue.
Oh, that's
All right, so Mary Beth, if you want to step up here and we could get you in, get you out, kind of thing, if you want.
okay, sounds good.
All right, take one of these and pass it down if you can, Ralph.
I was afraid we were gonna get that. Sorry. Is that
Yeah.
the budget?
Do you have your-
No,
I
that's
have a
a draft
Scarlett.
warrants.
I have a match.
Have not been reviewed by the selectmen, very draft form.
So let's talk a little bit about that. We've had these draft warrants in the past. Please
Yeah.
respect the, the nature of how we're getting this, and the fact that it is not for dissemination to the general public. It is not the warrant that the town meeting is going to see. Well, it's likely, but it's not likely, but it's possible that this will be in its current form. But
No, it probably
most
won't
likely
be.
there's going to be things
There'll
that are
be
taken.
changes,
Yeah.
right.
So, but this gives us an opportunity where we only have these 4 meetings left to make recommendations, to do a quick pass through. And I would say, if you have questions, try to eliminate them to generalizations. Mary Beth does have all the backup with her, but if there's something, yeah, good. If there's something that you need that would involve a little bit of research, I would request that maybe we just hold off, because that article might not be part of this final warrant, right? So,
That's right.
and you could probably give us a heads up on which are likely to go away, if you know, or not, so.
I think she has it.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Mary Beth, or if you want me to, I could read the article. Sometimes
Sure.
that gets a little.
Would you not want to, or?
Yeah, I will. Okay, so Article 1 is not anything that we typically vote on. It's about bringing the vote for the town officers. So we'll move on to Article P3. So articles with a P are appropriations for the current fiscal year or a prior fiscal year, and will be expended in the current fiscal year. Everybody's familiar with that process. We used to have a special,
Right.
and now we just do it as a P article. So Article P3 is here at the beginning. See if the town will vote to appropriate $525.64 from free cash to pay the following fiscal year bills for the fire department. Specialty Vehicles Inc., $188.64. Getchell Plumbing and Heating, $337. Or take any other action relative thereto. And that's proposed by the chief of the fire department. So, just outstanding bills.
Outstanding bills.
And just a quick question,
Yes.
that possibly could have been an avenue the library could have looked towards?
As far as a P
As-
article?
Well, is that an avenue they could have looked to get the funding for the reserve fund we just,
They could have,
Okay.
yep,
okay,
That's more or less what I was looking for. I was trying to explain other avenues.
right.
yeah.
Okay, so Article P4. Any other questions on P3? Sorry. Oh, so John, you don't have the benefit of seeing this either, so if there's some, I'm gonna read it a little more carefully so that you can understand it as well by not being able to see it.
Picking up you loud and clear. It's perfectly fine.
All right.
Picking up the paper.
To see if the town will vote to transfer, this is Article P4, $500 from free cash to be added to the accountant's expense line. Reference line 5 of Article 2 of the May 1st, 2023 annual town meeting to supplement the expenses incurred in fiscal '24 or take any other action relative thereto. Mary Beth.
Okay, so on that one, there was some expenses when the former accountant came in, some things that she needed for the office to get set up, and this is leaving the line short. So we will just, I thought, do a P article there to take care of that, to get her through the rest of the year.
Okay. Article P5, to see if the town will vote to transfer a sum of money from free cash to be added to the fire department salaries line This is reference line 16 of Article 2 of the May 1st, 2023 annual town meeting to supplement the salary of the fire department, firefighter, paramedics, or take any other action relative thereto. Any idea what that sum of money may be? Proposed by the fire department.
So this happens every year with the police and the fire, and at first I think that Chief Clancy gave me a number of, like, he does a reverse budget, as he calls it, every week, and he said like 113,000, but it could be as low as 60,000. I said, well, that's a big difference. That's a big difference.
That is a big difference.
Because I'm looking at free cash and what we have and what we can spend. So I believe in Article 2. No, let's see. I sort of put a placeholder in here.
You want Article 2?
Well, no, it wouldn't be Article 2 for this.
Oh.
But I'm hoping it ends up about 60.
And it could be as much as...
Well, he had said 113, then he was in the following week, and he said, no, here it is, like 90 or so. But as of yesterday, which this was March 12th, March 11th, he was looking at 113,387.43. But that's if every single firefighter used all their time.
Right.
Which never happens. They roll over days and whatnot, and they don't use all their time. He's thinking it may come in as low as 60. But right now, this is ever changing. I don't know. He doesn't know.
Okay.
Okay?
Very good. Any other questions on that from anybody?
Just a quick question. So when you say,
Hold on, John.
rolling over time, is that like vacation days
Right.
or time?
Right. That they can roll over to the
and
next year.
And they sometimes, do they get paid their holidays like in chunk sums sometimes?
They do. They get paid twice a year for their
For that,
holidays.
so it
Yeah.
depends on, okay.
Okay, John?
These articles, if they're passed, does the cash come out July 1st?
No, these are for current years or prior year, and they would be paid out in fiscal 24.
Okay.
The P articles don't have to wait until July 1st, John.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But there has been an instance where a P article was paid after June 30th. There has been, but it's not
Maybe.
likely. Yeah,
Right. No,
Yeah.
but they can be paid out.
they can be.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thank you, John, for your question. Moving on to Article P6, to see if the town will vote to transfer a sum of money from free cash to be added to the police department salaries line. Reference line 15, Article 2 of the May 1st, 2023 annual town meeting, to supplement the salaries of the police department or take any other action relative thereto. It is proposed by the chief of police.
And this is the same scenario as the fire. The projection, when I spoke with the chief on March 6th, he's expecting to come in around 85 to 90 is what he will need.
At least it's a smaller window, right? Okay, any other questions on that? Article P6? Okay, Article P7. And just realize that these aren't our last discussions on these articles. This is just an opportunity to give them the first pass.
Familiar,
right?
yep, get familiar.
Article P7, see if the town will vote to appropriate $8,436.44 from free cash to pay First Student Inc. for transportation service for the Norfolk Agricultural High School for school year 22 to 23, which invoice was not received prior to the close of fiscal year 2023, or take any other action relative thereto.
That's correct. This is an invoice that they didn't email. They said they mailed. We never received it. And they didn't notify us of this bill until after our special town meeting. Right after. So therefore, we've told them it has to wait. It has to wait
So
until
it's been
this.
hanging around for a while.
Right. So now we've said, I want them all by email. You can mail them. But I
Yeah.
want them email and by mail. I want it to go to myself, Kathy, and Lori. But this bill was not received. So
So it's a prior bill.
prior year bill. Correct.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah,
Article
just
P7? Go ahead,
a
Kathleen.
comment that I'm looking at the budget that Mary Beth sent us, and thank you for that, Mary Beth. But the vocational transportation for fiscal 23 was 49,000, just about 50,000, and they were asking for another 8 on top of the 49,000. That was.
Well, this was the prior year.
I'm looking at expended fiscal 23, so this is fiscal 23.
Oh,
correct?
you're looking at the 23.
Yeah,
I thought you were looking at the
fiscal
20, the new budget. Yep.
No, fiscal 23, vocational transportation expended was 49,476.44, and they're looking for another 8,000 on top of that. Swell.
Yep. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your question. Article P8, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $136,492.74 from the Reserve for Appropriation Cable Access Account to fund public education and government access programming in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and 3/4, or take any other action relative thereto. It's proposed by the Board of Selectmen.
Correct. So this really isn't our money. This comes in from your Comcast bills. It comes into us and we pay it out to them. So it's just a pass-through, and we've set up a nice little routine where WHCA will notify me before an annual town meeting or a special town meeting for whatever money we have received to pay out. So we've done it also with a special
Okay, so
before.
that keeps it flowing.
Rosemary, you had a question?
Yeah, I understand we own that building. Is there a rental fee that we charge for that building?
There's probably a payment in lieu of taxes on that. I'd have to check and get
There's a
that number.
payment in lieu of taxes, right? Because it's
may be.
also a shared building with the neighboring town. Are we reimbursed for their usage of if they're there?
I don't think we ever have.
The rent of that building, because we're just like a regional school. We've got a regional situation sitting up there. We shouldn't be singularly burdening or even giving our resources unequally. We should be reimbursed to some degree.
Well, these aren't
Yeah,
really
yeah.
I
our
understand.
resources, but
Technically, if it's the resources are an amount paid to the town for utilizing the wires and things in town. So it is a contract between the taxpayers, or not just taxpayers, citizens of Whitman. And when that money comes in, we want to make sure that's.
so you're saying Hanson?
Hanson is utilizing the same building, and we're also giving. Are we getting our money back in terms of rent for the building?
So the question is related to the appropriation of $136,492.74.
Exactly.
Whether the money for the payment in lieu of taxes
Taxes comes back.
comes out of that sum of money, then that would be germane to the
Thank you.
article.
Thank you.
To maybe find out.
Find out. Thank you.
Sure, how they pay that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Article P9. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $45.25 from free cash to pay a prior year invoice to Express newspaper for a classified ad for the DPW from June of 23. We missed one. $45.
So this is conservation. No, this is DPW. 4525. They missed one. Correct.
Okay, prior year bill. Okay, that's it for the P articles. Now we are into the fiscal year 2025, and will be available if they are voted on July 1st, 2024. So Article 2,
Could I ask a general question?
yes, John?
On Article 2. When this was presented at the joint, Selectmen's Finance Committee meeting, watching the TV later, there was a reference to increased fees.
Yes.
And I'm curious how that plays into the budget.
It does.
Well, I'm sure there's an article within this warrant that specifies the different fee structure.
No, some of the fees that we're talking about can be just increased by a vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, without passing at town meeting.
Correct. So I've asked all the departments, do you have any fees that you can raise? We're looking for revenue everywhere. Can you look at your fees and see if they haven't been raised in years? So I called the treasurer collector and I said our demand fee is $15. You can go up to $30. I think we need to go up to get some more revenue in. So he said let's go to $25. He projected that revenue based on the demands that we normally take in, and he plugged that into the revenue side that we have. The fire chief, I asked them as well. He said there's one ALS 1 for the ambulance that can go up, and I think he's at, I don't know. I want to say 20, maybe 300, and he can go up to, he said 28, he may even go up higher. And he said that brought in over like $600,000. So Ken went in and plugged in that number. So we'll have the Board of Selectmen vote that. The Board of Selectmen also has fees for all their licensing. And so we're looking at that. I passed that around to the board at our last meeting for them to review. Some of those fees haven't been raised in 10, 15, 20 years. So, let's look at them. We also have a survey that Lori O'Brien in the Selectman's office received from surrounding towns, looking at all their fees. So we want to be somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
So it's time. So I'm looking for I called the police. I said, what do you have? Building inspector, I believe, went up on some of their fees not too long ago. I asked the clerk. I think she said there's one area that she could go up in July. But really, recently, I think, her fees are up to date. So we're just looking for revenue everywhere we can get it.
Well, I think from the finance committee, we probably could impose a fee for missed meetings, if that helps the cause.
Sure. We'll take it.
Or rents, like we just mentioned, rents on the buildings that.
John, does that answer your question?
And John will be paying a lot.
Well, where does the money go? Is it going to have an immediate impact on any of the budgets this year, or is it type of thing that will go in the general funds and be available a year later? I'm just thinking, as a finance committee, we should be aware of not necessarily opposing anything, but be aware of what fees are going up and just have an understanding so that if somebody says, yeah, we voted this budget, but did you know that they're bringing in, $600,000 in revenue?
Right. Yeah, so,
And if it doesn't bother anybody else on the finance committee, you can put me on mute.
John, we understand your pain. We all don't like to pay more in fees, but I think this is just, an opportunity for us to look at ways that we can increase revenues for fiscal 25, because this will affect the fiscal 25 year budget.
That's correct.
So it does.
I will drop my discussion of it. My only point is that I think the finance committee should be aware that the fee structure in a lot of the departments is changing. I don't have an opposition to it. I just think, as a finance committee, we should know that piece of the fiscal puzzle, even though we don't make any recommendations for it.
Sure, yep, very good point, well taken.
And it hasn't been brought up yet in front of the board. It's, hasn't gone on an agenda yet. So when the chief wants to bring that to the board, the same thing with the treasurer collector, that will be on the agenda, which will be posted and
There will be public comments.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there may be a curmudgeon abatement too for that, at some point, if that helps you. Mike had a question.
Yes, I think, I'm with John. I don't necessarily oppose it. I think that there's a lesson for the town to take in here, right? That we should be every year looking at these fees. Because right now it looks like we're scrambling. I just raise the fee on everything. And there are people that are already, stretched and are vocal about being stretched. And now we come in and we say, your dog's going to cost 50, not 30, or whatever it is, right?
Oh, yeah. They're not going.
So, but you know what I'm saying? It's just, by way of example, they will find a reason, which is not an unreasonable thing. But if we were to take a more proactive state on this and put it as part of a function that we do as a town every year, let's look at what our fee structure is. What's our cost? Are we at least allaying the costs of these things, and are we in alignment with the surrounding area?
That's what we're
It lets us be proactive rather than reactive. So that's my only point.
Yep.
More of an ongoing thing,
Yeah.
every couple of years.
Yep.
The demand
Everybody
fee
does.
too, that hurts the people, who don't pay their bills on time, right?
Right,
I mean, for
right.
everybody that pays their bills on time, they're not impacted by an increase in demand fee. Not only that, the treasurer collector doesn't even send to demand a bill unless it's gone 2 weeks beyond the due date. So it's not like somebody's 1 day late and they get hit with this fee, right? I mean, anybody could be a couple of days late. So that doesn't affect everybody. So yes, and I know like the departments have looked at their fees individually, not all, collectively each year. But like I said, the building inspector did some. The town clerk had done the dog fees a few years ago.
Yeah,
So,
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a popular thing to do, that's
No.
for sure.
No.
Right.
No, but I mean, you can't get a hamburger for the same price it was last year or last week or
Right.
even what it was at noontime. So I think people are used to that function, but I think, again, our lesson is let's just be more proactive about it.
I just, that particular fee, if someone's late for the bill, it might be because they don't have the money to pay the bill.
True.
and then adding more money on that bill might delay it even more. I mean, just
But you can't say we're not bringing in revenue, and now we're trying to bring in
I-
revenue.
I-
It's both
Yeah.
sides,
Well-
you know?
If that was the only way to bring in revenue, I would agree with you.
No, but you have to look at all of them.
Yes, that's what I'm
So,
just
yeah.
saying. In that particular one, it might actually to do it too much would cause a delay and not create the function that you wanted. So say you had a $50 bill, the anxiety, it turns to, say, a $100 bill, that person might just say, screw it, I'm going to not think about that bill and not pay it at all. And that is how that process
Eventually,
works.
with
Yeah,
excise, there's liens and they
Yeah.
have to pay them.
We'll take their house.
Yeah, no, but,
You know what I'm saying.
right.
Just in terms of...
Yes, good point, well taken. All right, so we just got on to Article 2. So we have a new draft copy of Article 2, but we're not going to go through Article 2 at this point. So we're going to skip over to page 3 of 21. So Article 10, to see if the town will vote to authorize spending limits for fiscal 25 for the following revolving accounts approved under the town's bylaws or take any other action relative thereto. So the revolving account is animal control, spending limit $25,000. Council on Aging, $10,000. Library fines and fees, $20,000. Planning board, $75,000. Police, $20,000. Recreation, $75,000. Street lighting receipts, $15,000. It's proposed by the town administrator. Mary Beth.
So this is an article that may not be on the final. This is something we raised some of these limits last year. We didn't touch anything this year. I just copied this article over. I have reached out to our auditors. A lot of towns don't even put this on any longer for the spending limits. So this one may or may not be in the final.
So if the spending limits are the same as last year, we don't need to put it on.
It's the same as last year.
Yeah.
Well, no, what? But this
Right now they are.
This article has appeared every year.
Yeah, okay,
Not
yeah,
just when
right.
there's an increase.
Yeah.
But this article in itself,
Right.
the auditors said a lot of towns don't even put that article in there. So.
Even if the fees change, I mean, the limits change?
Right, they don't even have to
Oh.
put this on. For
Okay.
fees.
So
Yeah.
that just doesn't have to be
Like-
okayed by town, voted on by town meeting, but obviously the discussion is with the select
Right.
board and whoever.
So recreation actually went over their spending limit, but they had plenty of money. And so we called the auditors and said, is this something that needs to be voted by the Board of Selectmen to increase? And they said, no. They said, this has changed.
So this whole thing could go away.
Right, exactly.
But I think it really does help, like for our committee, to know what the spending limits are for each of these revolving accounts.
Okay.
But like I said, if you don't need to put it on the warrant, you don't have to put it on the warrant. Maybe just an email to the finance committee annually, perhaps. Okay, Article 11. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $75,000 from free cash for asphalt, signage, and engineering services for any expenses directly related to road repair work or take any other action relative thereto. And this is proposed by the Board of Public Works Commissioners.
So this article and Article 12, these were originally submitted with $100,000. They went in front of the Capital Committee looking at free cash and whatnot. They were reduced to $75,000, and these were voted by the Capital Committee to recommend. One is for asphalt, signage, and engineering, and the other is for sidewalks. So one is for roads and one is for sidewalks on these articles. So
Will
Okay.
this be reimbursed by STIP, or was there an attempt to, because I know that you pay out and then you get it reimbursed by Plymouth County, or was there any attempt to do any of these?
This is on
Bruce.
the list of the
But I understand you didn't apply for it. Did you ask for Plymouth County to reimburse any of this? Because
county.
for grants, you'll get a grant for any of these? There's no reimbursement essentially for any of these?
The last couple of years, so 4 or 5 years ago, I think we started committing an extra $200,000 a year to accelerate the road repair because traffic might be going up.
Right.
This is continuing.
Which is always a good thing.
Just,
This is in addition to those funds that we
Right.
already got
Correct.
through.
We get
grants.
300,000 or so in chapter 90. This is
So,
going down.
good, it's great that we're doing that, but there are monies available to reimburse when those extras, not just chapter money, formula money, but Plymouth
Okay.
County.
they're really not related to these articles.
So the back is we're not going to be reimbursed. Nobody's looked into that. Okay.
If you have a specific
We
Vermont
do.
may
With Plymouth
have
County
absolutely may.
does. We
What I'm saying is, if you have specific
John
information-
Byers sent that.
If I could just finish my thought. If you have specific information,
Mm-hmm.
like the information Don shared, stuff like that, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, that's the same information Don shared, the one that I'm speaking of. It applies for that.
What I'm saying is, it's helpful for me to see personally, like if you make a comment, and then to say, hey, this is the specific program I saw, and would you potentially look into it? That's very helpful, you know?
Okay, then I will do just that. Plymouth County.
Well, you don't have to do it now.
Okay.
Yeah, send
Do
them
it in an email.
I will send it.
So just to Justin's point too, he mentioned that in previous years we've committed more than $100,000 in addition to Chapter 90, but I think it's worth noting that other funds that were appropriated were for streets that weren't approved. And we couldn't use Chapter 90 money for some of those roads.
Right, we're getting about an extra $7,000 a year or so in Chapter 90 because of the.
Because of that increase.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
But, yeah.
Very good. So that was a very good,
I got the same kickback when I asked for that too.
Kathleen.
The only comment I want to make is that I've been on the committee for 5 years, and people have asked me, now that more and more people know that I'm on the finance committee, could we get a list of the roads that are going to be repaired? It's people who are sitting there watching the same roads repaired multiple times, and I get it, the main roads do have to be repaired, but little side streets who are pitted with potholes, it's like, why can't we get a list? If I'm 3 years away, I'll at least know 3 years from now my street is on the list of repairs.
I think the capital committee's asked Bruce that before, and he's always hesitant to put a long-term plan up because a lot of the time he's doubling down on water and sewer projects or gas projects because it's a lot cheaper to repair a road when someone's already in there. And you don't want to, if you repair a road with Chapter 90 funds, that's a guaranteed street for the next 5 years. You don't want to get in right before the gas company tries to do a replacement.
Yeah.
So it's a
moving target, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's done an effective job, I think, at town meetings to
As I say,
defray that.
usually has
Yeah.
a list or some,
Yeah.
He kind of gives
Yeah,
a hint, but there's no way you can get a 10-year
right.
capital improvement on
Refer the
road.
individuals to Bruce and say, call him up and ask.
Yeah, well, that's probably the best way.
That would be the best. I don't think you're going to get a list,
Okay.
especially a 10-year list.
Because when they get dropped down in the order, then they're just
Then there's complaints.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened? Well, I thought I was in 2026, and I'm now not.
There
that
is
changes.
there is
But, yeah,
recommendation, since
no.
we're talking about this, since it was allowed to be talked about, there is recommendation from the original, so the best practice recommendation for this particular thing is to provide the list, and it does a list with the contingent that it is a moving target, as Justin said, but it gives people an idea that it is going to happen and that list can shift and change because you say even if you're 10 years out, 5 years out, it is that. And it will cause people to call up and say, why I'm not on the list. And that's probably the hesitancy. Why am I 5 years instead of 4 years? It's
Well, that would be up to the DPW to
yeah, so ultimately a lot of DPWs do not choose to because they don't want to have
Field
to
all the
explain.
calls, right.
Exactly.
Okay, we're moving on to Article 13. See if the town will vote to appropriate $9,800 from free cash to engage environmental partners to provide professional engineering services to assist the town of Whitman with the preparation of an emergency action plan for the Harding Pond Dam located in the town of Whitman. This is proposed by the Board of Public Commissioners. Mary Beth.
Right, so I do have some backup, not with me here, but this is something that Bruce and I talked about recently. The town is required to have an emergency action plan, so Bruce did reach out to environmental partners to get a quote, and the quote is the $9,800, but that is something that we do need to have in place.
I would say, especially in the wake of the recent weather we've been having.
Especially.
Yeah.
And is it Board of Public Works Commissioners?
That's how it read in last year. We went back and forth on,
Yeah, that seems very strange.
Doesn't it?
Without work.
Who are the public commissioners if
Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
well, let me just say,
Well,
it's Public Works Commissioners.
Yeah.
This is a draft, people.
Well, this is why we're here. We're here to help.
critical?
Yeah.
This is where we find mistakes.
Yeah.
Not mistakes.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to ask this
Edit.
question. I'm going to ask this question because the rescue plan gave Massachusetts billions of dollars, particularly for dams and bridges and things that pertain to them. Has anybody sought to get any of that money?
Absolutely.
And how did that go for this?
Well, Stephen Lynch's office reached out about some projects that would fit what they're doing. And we reached out with this Harding Pond by email. They called us right back and said this would be a good project for them. So
Is it a reimbursement thing?
well, a grant, and I'm like, absolutely, keep us in the loop. So that is something that we.
So this may be a
hope comes to fruition.
reimbursable amount that we're paying.
Well, I
for
don't know
this.
about the 98 to get the action plan, but to have
Maybe to have the action
work
done.
That's
Okay.
right.
All right, that's
Much
good.
bigger
It's
than
an action plan, yeah.
$9,800.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is.
We talked about this on both dams, I think, about 8-10 years ago, that we received a letter that we were.
We have been getting letters, yes.
we're in some,
Yeah.
And
we're
I
in
think-
bad shape.
I think Bruce is even more concerned with the Hobart's
Yeah.
pond dam.
Yeah, yeah.
More than even.
Well, they did some emergent repair, but it
Right.
really wasn't very effective,
No.
from what I understand.
No, so we're looking into that, yep.
So great. That's great that we could maybe get some grant money for both of them. So, okay. Any other questions? Article 13. Moving on to Article 14. To see if the town will vote to appropriate from available cemetery funds a sum of $16,500 to purchase and equip a new lawn mowing tractor, or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Department of Public Works or Public Works Commissioner. Now it has it. Okay, Public Works Commissioners. So, Mary Beth.
Okay, so I'm sure I have backup here on this one. This is just for a tractor. They want to use money that they have. So this wouldn't come out of our free cash. It would come out of cemetery funds. Let me see if I have.
Does this exceed the capital?
Isn't it 20?
It's 20.
it's 20 now.
And it's
It's
16.
20.
Yeah.
It's 20.
It was brought up,
Yeah.
but
It doesn't meet
below
the
the limit.
threshold.
Yeah.
Right, correct.
Till we buy all the attachments for $8,000 next year.
Let's see.
Well, she's looking that up, Rosemary.
We, a few years ago, purchased something, and I'm trying to remember the equipment. It was probably about 4 years ago. And I believe they said we'd be using it, they needed it for the cemetery and the
Yeah,
DPW.
yeah.
And
Was
I
it-
thought it was a lawnmower.
Yeah,
I thought it was a lawnmower.
I don't even know if it was 4 years ago. I know
remember
time's
that,
been
so-
going by, but it was
Yeah, but I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think it mentioned the cemetery.
no cemetery
It
funds.
was mentioned, it was.
The question was asked, well, if you're using cemetery funds, are you going to use it to mow the cemetery?
Yep.
And they said, yeah, they're going to use it for the town park and the cemetery.
What happened to that one?
It
Well,
was.
if we get
I
some
don't know.
tree chipping equipment, let's hope we use it at the library.
Yeah.
this is why we need a 5-year capital plan from every department.
Yeah.
So that if they
No
bought
doubt
it
about it.
3 years ago, we'd say you just bought it.
Yeah.
But we don't have some departments.
So you're relying on
do it,
Chuck's
some
good
don't.
memory.
An inventory of
And it's
those.
fading fast.
No, I think he's got a solid memory.
No, but I know as soon as I read that again, I said that's
That
awfully
seems
familiar.
Thank you.
I think this may be,
Stewart's Power Equipment, yep. So it's $15,916.
is
Yeah.
what he has here for, and
Actually,
this was
Yeah. So
back.
after taxes.
Bruce would be, it'd be a better
He would.
question to
give
ask
a
him.
backup.
Yep.
Yep.
So if you want to make a note there, we can always get additional backup if we need it from Bruce Martin. Thank you, Mary Beth. We're going to move on now to page 4, Article 15. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $7,000 from free cash to purchase and install a chain link fence in the area of Hobart's Pond Dam, or take any other action relative thereto. That's proposed by the Department of Public Works
Yes.
Commissioners, and
Yes.
and this is to prevent people from falling in the
That's
spillway,
right. That's what he has.
I imagine.
Yep.
So it's a safety thing.
It is a safety thing, and like I said, Bruce is more concerned with that than
Right.
Hardy Pond.
Well, the
How
chain link fence might hold the dam together too, so.
This is what I mean. What change has happened that, because if we, hundreds of years, have never had a fence there.
So we have been shared with a communication in the past. Did you say we've received recent communications from Army Corps of Engineers?
I'm not sure who it's from, but yes.
Oh.
That we need a fence?
State.
Passed, well, I don't know about the fence, just about
Yeah.
the dam.
The dams.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, sent that to
Does
Bruce.
does it give you any indication of potential fines? Because I know the last time we saw a letter, it very clearly said that the town
You need to start doing something.
or you're going to be fined an amount by the day, as I recall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is-
Amount?
yeah.
I have to look and see. I don't-
Yeah.
It was back
Does it
when
have
Frank
to do with
was.
the fence though? I think.
No, that's
No.
that's the dam itself. Yeah.
The dam.
Which end is the outflow?
The outflow is over by the brick building. The inflow is by the DPW.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you go over there, you can see it's in bad shape.
Yeah, well, you get even the fence near the VFW end. That's
Right.
look. It leaves a little love and kisses
Yeah,
there too.
right.
So it's replacing a current fence that's already there.
No, I don't think there's a
I don't
fence
think
there
there's
now.
a fence there.
No. I don't think there ever was.
Install a chain link fence.
There's no
Okay, so
fence.
they're
Yeah, I don't
replaced.
think-
Again, I'm going to go back to my original question. Has something changed about is the excess water we're seeing something creating more of a risk than it has in the
Liability.
100 years that it's been this way?
People like to sue.
Oh, 100
No, I
years
think
ago they
Bruce would
didn't
be a good person for that,
Okay.
but I believe his
the water.
need for this is more serious now than it's been in the past.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
absolutely.
Thank
All right, so if there's a communication that can be shared, it would come from Bruce.
Oh, I have it in Bruce. I've given it some to Bruce, but as
Okay.
far as more detail on the fence and the need for the fence.
No, if there was some
Bruce.
detail in the letter that regarded financial penalties
This is on the dam.
on the dam.
itself.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me look and see if it says
Okay.
financial
Yeah.
penalties, but we do get
This
notices
was something
on a
back when
regular
Frank
basis.
was, I don't know if it was last year when he was interim or
Oh,
the year
maybe.
before.
when it says something like
he
that,
brought
it
up.
does bring the urgency up to the level of, actions.
For this article?
Not for this
No,
item.
no, for the dam,
For the dam.
The dam.
the bigger problem.
That's why we
Yeah,
want to
there's
have
no-
that action plan
There's
done.
no
Yeah,
And
fence there.
Yeah.
and that would probably satisfy the state saying, hey,
it
we're
will.
working on it.
It will, exactly.
Okay,
Just trying to
so,
check that off.
all right.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So the fence, this is Article 15, the fence, $7,000. Okay, Article
But not free
16.
cash with you.
To see if the town will vote to appropriate $316,900 from free cash to pay for engineering costs associated with seeking state transportation improvement program funds or take any other action relative thereto. So this is your
This is
tip money. And this is proposed by the Department of Public Works Commissioners. And I don't know all this comments are. Insufficient information. Capital Committee will make recommendation on town hall floor. Is that going to stay in there? That seems unusual. Usually the Capital Committee doesn't make a recommendation on town hall floor.
They did on this one, though. Were you, no, you're not on the Capitol.
Catherine?
And I
Right.
missed one meeting.
Oh, that was
But this was the last one, Catherine. I
And
think you were
this,
there.
I was at the last meeting where I said this is new. I recognized everything else except for this.
Right. So I think because they didn't have at the time updated information from Bruce, what Bruce emailed him was what was presented a year or so ago. But I did just either last Friday or last week or the beginning of this week send even more information on the STIP. So this is an article that I think once the Capitol sees the backup, that they would recommend if there's enough funds to do this.
And we're meeting the 11th?
I
is it?
believe so, yes, the 11th. And also, Bruce has asked, Kevin Cleary has asked if there could be a presentation at an upcoming Board of Selectmen's meeting on this whole project. So there's so much money that the town has committed to paying, where we're getting quite a bit of money, in grants and whatnot to get this work done. So I really would like to see us stay on our plan of putting X amount each year, rather than not doing it and getting hit with where we're gonna come up with this money. And if we don't, we're not gonna receive.
Yeah, oh yeah, we got to stay the course.
Yeah.
Millions.
Yeah.
I agree
So-
with that.
So is it just the tips? Is it STIPs or tips?
I asked that same question.
It's STIPs.
So
Steps.
the federal program is TIP,
Tip.
Transportation
Oh,
Dot Infrastructure Program.
The
So-
state.
And the
It's-
state ones.
It's administered on the state level, so they give the funds up to the states. Old Colony Planning Council is our local MPO that kind of decides whether or not projects are moving forward. And Mass Highway distributes STIP money from that federal fund.
Okay, so we should edit the tips to STIPs.
I think our DPW prefers STIP. I think they're both accurate.
I did ask that same question the other day, and I think it was Kevin Cleary, and he said tips.
Okay. It's their ball. We'll
Right,
let them
I'm
call
gonna
it
leave it
what
as they wrote it.
The old colony is the one they're getting it from? Is that correct?
So Old Colony is the way the grant program's set up, and I'm reaching back now. Each local metropolitan planning organization has to be the sort of vetting organization around the country. Old Colony Planning Council is ours.
Yeah, because we don't, it's this, okay. And that's the same one that you would go through for all the other roads, you just have to file for the roads. Just so, since you're already aware of it, and Kane asked, that's the same one that you would get any road or any sidewalk through. is the same Old Colony, so that's who you'd go through for anything,
And so and just because Mary Beth mentioned,
since you're already aware of it.
the updated information we got, Kathleen, is probably relevant to you, is the Mass DOT Highway Division gave us a letter that this is an eligible project for participating in the federal grant program. So it's on approval, but it is that they vetted it. This would meet the standards.
It is an eligible or ineligible?
It is eligible.
Eligible, okay.
Yeah, if I may, quick question.
Yes,
Highway
certainly.
Division project eligibility application.
Yeah, and just
Okay,
a reminder.
wait a minute. Rosemary?
A question probably for Justin. So if we're gonna do this study, we feel confident that we'll have our projects accepted?
Confident enough.
It's kinda like a
spend
investment.
design money right
Yeah.
now. So that was actually why the capital committee hasn't voted on it yet. We want
Okay.
sort of an update from the DPW on, are we still confident before we commit another $300,000?
Right.
At this point, we'll be in for $500,000.
Yeah.
What I
Rosemary.
was going to remind, might have been helpful, was that when they got up to present this, they said they were happy that they were filing, that Whitman has never really asked for the money. That was something from this Old Colony STIPS, and that they had a good chance of doing it. The way they determine is they have a big bulk of money. It goes both by immediate need and how infrequently a town asks for things. And I think Ms. Byers came in last week and was very clear, we never asked for anything. And you can look this up online. It's available for anybody. Other towns are asking all the time. Whitman really doesn't.
Okay, so this.
That's what Ms. Byers was mentioning. And it handles the road, the other things I was asking about earlier.
So when you said they
The DPW.
feel good, it's
Yeah,
just the
really
DPW.
good.
It's not like you have the inside track or anything, right?
The inside track is always public information. It's always available to every single one, not just me or Ms.
Okay.
Byers. You can look up online how many other people have it. And yeah, I do go and have beers with guys from
Okay.
there on Wednesdays. So they do say, you guys never asked for
And
it.
obviously, if we haven't asked frequently, then that should get noticed then.
That was
Point
the...
is, we're asking.
Yes.
And it sounds like we're being heard, and we're
Yeah.
looking to get a good bunch of money.
Good.
That's the point.
Okay.
Good.
14.8 million is the estimate for the project.
Right.
Design is about 10% of that. And
Yeah.
if this article passes the town meeting, we'll be in for a little over $500,000.
Yeah.
So I want to clarify here, Mr. King. It was just a point is we are asking. We asked for one. Probably eligibility. Did we ask? And you said to me, Rosemary, email me on where we can get it. But here we are talking about a place that those things are eligible. So the town already knows about them. They don't have to go through Rosemary Conley, volunteer from the school to get that to the finance committee. So that I want to point out. These other ones could have been asked for as well, were they? Is what I was asking. In the same capacity as the DPW did STIPS. The other road things, every single sidewalk, everything can be asked for that program.
Okay, yeah, I think we're all in agreement
Can I
here.
respond just
Yep.
real quick?
Go ahead.
Just, I think generally for the finance committee, what you should be, I think, considering is, we are looking at avenues like this to receive funds. This is on our radar, we're actively trying to do that. So it shouldn't be the assumption that we're not, the assumption kind of should be that we are. But if there's some that are out there too that we could potentially look into, send them our way. I mean, we're actively in the business of looking for this.
Yes.
And I hope this isn't a defenseful thing. Since I've been on this, was the first to publicly put
Yeah,
out.
I don't think we need to go that
I
far
know,
back.
on aid and grants from this publicly, in a public manner,
Rosemary,
put out 70,
Rosemary,
90,
Rosemary.
and most of the grants that have
Rosemary,
supported
please.
funds.
This isn't a debate, right?
It isn't,
We're
but
all
I want to make
pulling-
sure that there's a
We're
clear...
pulling the wagon the same way. Thank you.
I hope so.
Article 17. See if the town to vote to appropriate $323,087.67 in available Chapter 90 funds. Such funds to be expended by the Department of Public Works in accordance with the guidelines and requirements of the Massachusetts Highway Department, or take any other action relative thereto, and it's proposed by the Board of Public Works Commissioners. Mary Beth.
So I just have this letter. We have this article on every year. I have a letter from Mara Haley, Governor Mara Haley. It says this letter certifies contingent upon legislative approval of the $200 million annual bond authorization. Whitman's Chapter 90 apportionment for fiscal year 2025 is that number, 323,087.67.
Well, that should help. All right, questions on Article 17, Chapter 90? Okay, moving on, Article 18. See if the town vote to appropriate $30,000 from free cash to purchase new computers for the town hall, library, police, and fire department, or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Director of Technology, and the Capital Committee has voted to recommend. Okay, Kathleen.
And this is where I want more information on how many computers are going to each of these 1, 2, 3, 4 entities. Because it was, the impetus really came from citizens complaining about the library computers. And I know we need to meet a certain threshold for it to be a capital concern, but I'd hate to think, and I wasn't there the night that this vote was taken.
I wasn't either.
So I would have asked for it to be postponed. I don't want it to be, not that I have anything against town hall or the police or the fire department, but I don't want people jumping on the bandwagon. Oh yeah, the library's going to go for some computers, we want to too. This was a specific request by citizens to upgrade the computers in the library. And I would like a breakdown from the Director of Technology, since this is his article, even though I asked him and he said he couldn't tell me that night. I would like to know how many computers are going to each of these entities in this article.
Did you get a breakdown?
Let me see what I have here. So
Because we asked the Capital Committee that specific question as well when they were in to present their capital
Okay.
recommendations. But we didn't get an answer then either.
We asked the
Okay.
IT department when they were here as well and could not get an answer.
Right.
Well, the answer would have to come from Josh McVale,
Right.
IT Director. And I think that the question can be brought up at the next capital meeting on the 11th. I do have just his quote, but it doesn't say for what department.
And the quote says $30,000.
$30,303.
Yeah, 300. I will email Josh ahead of time to let him know that I would like him to provide a breakdown of how many computers will be earmarked for each of these 4 town departments.
Okay, and then if you could forward that, we'll put it out to the rest of the committee. Because the committee hasn't voted on capital. The Finance Committee was presented the recommendations of the Capital Committee, but obviously we haven't voted them yet either.
Okay.
So any more information would be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Anything else? Article 18? Moving on. Article 19. See if the town will appropriate $60,000 from free cash to upgrade the existing phone systems as part of a mitigation or a migration from digital phones to IP phones, and provide high availability for all town buildings or take any other action relative thereto. It is proposed by the Director of Technology, and Capital Committee voted to recommend. So, 60,000. You got backup.
Yes.
Capital Committee has vetted that one out. Okay, so Article 20, see if the town will vote to appropriate $82,000 from free cash to fund the following capital articles. Pool house pump room upgrade, $21,000. Ground condenser replacement, $14,000. Fire panel replacement upgrade, $47,000. These are proposed by the Facilities Director, and the Capital Committee did vote to recommend.
Right.
So we did talk about these as well. It's a presentation by Capital.
We did, and I have to say, Todd DeCudo does an amazing job of providing backup. He provides at least one quote, sometimes multiple quotes, and he is, in my opinion, the budget manager most committed to the 5-year plan. He is the role model for other, and he's only been in the job a couple of years. He really is committed to complying with the request that he generates a 5-year plan.
And we know that we have seen upgrades in capital related to the pool for a while. And we
Yes.
haven't done anything.
Right,
So,
yep.
so it
They have
seems
voiced
like
their
it's,
concerns
a
over the
little
years.
overdue.
Yep.
So you'll notice, if I may, on
Yes.
Article 20, that that amount has changed. What was put in originally was 81,000, and now it's 82.
82.
So it was the pool house pump room upgrades that did go from 20 to 21.
Okay,
That was discussed
That
at the
was last
Capitol.
week.
Yeah.
Last meeting.
okay. All right, and then Article 21, see if the town will vote to appropriate $15,000 from the opioid settlement funds account to the Community Service Whitman Will Counseling Program, or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Board of Selectmen. Mary Beth.
Right, and this may not even be going on this meeting.
This warrant.
Going on this warrant. I spoke with the town accountant, the interim town accountant, and he is setting up a couple of funds. So I guess we do need an article to move money that was received in '23 into a new account, and then it can be expended from there, and it doesn't need to be on a town meeting warrant. And I'll get the backup on that. But what we did is looking to work on the budget and save money. Whitman Will usually has $9,000 in Article 2. I put 0 so that we could use, a lot of the towns just aren't using their opioid settlement funds. So I did call over to the police and the fire, sent them an email and said, what can you use this money for? So $15,000 for Whitman Will. There's about $39,000 in total that we've gotten to date. And then the police, because they go out, for the emergencies and whatnot, do some counseling, not them personally, but they have people that go out to these scenes, and they have costs that are associated with the opioid. So he said definitely that he could use some of the funds as well. They can use Narcan, but they don't need $39,000 in Narcan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we want to start using these funds
Yeah.
that are going to the towns. I even saw something on the news a couple of weeks ago that a lot of the towns, they get that money in, but to use it appropriately, and there's reporting that has to be done. You have to account for every cent and where it went. So Whitman Will is for this purpose. It's a great
Use of the funds.
it is.
So Whitman does just the reporting, but the police and fire do the spending? Is that
No. Whitman Will, we would put $15 to go,
15,000?
$15,000 to go to Whitman Will.
Okay. I don't know what Whitman Will does in terms of direct. They might do a little outreach, but I would wonder if police, fire, dividing it up between police, fire, and schools might have a more direct, particularly schools and children. And Sean could probably have a better answer because he is kind of more of an expert in this drug prevention realm within the public schools.
Whitman Will does give direct services to kids in
the schools.
and adults.
And
Yeah,
the
so
school
training.
doesn't have that within their purview. It's outside of. We don't have that within our budget at the school. I mean, usually a school will have something. In that, are you saying that we don't have
Not
anything?
specifically for addiction services. No, it's just
General counsel.
Just
I mean, the school that I'm at in Brockton, we service some of Hanson students there. But
so
for
really.
recovery services in the school, they don't.
So it's not just recovery; it's also preventative services too, as well.
They're primarily preventative, actually.
Yeah. So, and we don't have any preventative services within our school.
Whitman Will is a major tool that they use.
So it's an outsourced preventative. We don't in-house. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
The Board of Health is looking for outreach service.
Yeah, for
funding.
opioid.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I just, could we in-house this and have it more, that's all. Direct access and more intimate.
So you're asking those entities could avail themselves to the opioid settlement funds? Is that what you're saying, Elizabeth?
Things.
If they're aware of them,
I'm saying this later, there's a.
it's the Board of Health.
Her own money.
Okay,
Outreach services.
something to look into.
Yeah, that's who she is spending her own money, she did mention that. The Board of Health.
Yes.
She did mention for outreach services and
Okay,
for getting
thank
rid
you,
of
good point.
needles.
All right, Article 22, article to be considered for removal due to the budget constraints. I don't even know if I want to read it. It's a 2024 four-wheel drive Chevrolet Colorado, and the Capital Committee did vote to recommend. So this is probably where we're getting to that line where we asked the Capital Committee to prioritize
Right.
the remaining articles. They shouldn't really prioritize all the articles, because if we get down to the point where we can't, expend, I think the total was $735,000 or somewhere in that general
I
vicinity.
have that here.
But if we get down to where we're going to be only able to fund $460,000 in capital articles,
Correct.
it would be helpful if the Capital Committee could prioritize.
724.
724. Who's close? Yep, 724. So that's how much right now that the capital committee has voted to recommend at this point.
And that is without the
Anything from the
300,
districts.
let me see here, does that include the 316? So it does not include the 316, but it does include the 300, 114.27 for the schools. So like I said, this is fluid. You know,
Right.
we're going to look at
Yep.
these each and every week. That was my personal comment here, only because of, when I was doing the budget.
It's been my personal comment too, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, all right, very good. Article 23, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $68,140.25 from free cash to purchase and equip a 2024 Chevy Tahoe four-wheel drive SSV Administrative Police Cruiser. This vehicle will replace a 2013 Ford Administrative Cruiser currently in use that is at the end of its useful life. And this is proposed by the police chief.
That's correct. And he did give a quote here. Now, you would have gotten that from the capital committee backup. So you have that.
Okay?
Yep.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Isn't the police department supposed to include the replacement cruisers as part of their budget, not capital, based on Matt and Collins, whoever had the report? Justin, you probably know
That was a
that.
bad recommendation that the capital committee disagreed with at the time,
Okay,
because we wanted to sort of maintain at least one cruiser a year.
that's fine.
It met the definition of capital on mine, so it was we didn't mind continuing.
Okay.
It was the useful life that became the debate because of the fact that it's driven so hard. They don't really have a 5-year useful life.
Was it lease?
Well, that was the other thing.
Yeah.
That
Well, they
used
might
to
have been
lease them
back
all the
then.
time,
Yeah,
and
we
they-
used to
Matt
back
report
then.
said stop leasing
Yeah.
and just buy them.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, good questions. Thank you for your updates. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $123,786 from Article P7 of the May 2020 fiscal 21 annual town meeting, reserved for purchase ambulance account, to purchase a new set of turnout gear for all members of the fire department as the secondary set of gear has turned 10 years old. And that's NEPA 1851, the standard that establishes requirements for the selection, care, maintenance of structural firefighting, protective clothing, and equipment. It dictates the gear that is 10 years old be replaced 10 years after the manufacture date, regardless of care or usage. The gear includes a structural firefighting jacket, pants, and a protective firefighting hood. This is proposed by the chief of the fire department. Okay, so this is the funding source is coming from the reserve for appropriation purchase ambulance account.
There's, I believe, 300,000 in that account. The chief wants to take this money out of there, and that is for 26 sets of gear.
Thank you, that's what I was gonna ask.
Okay, there you go. Yes,
It's probably NFPA 1851, not NEPA.
say that again.
That's
Probably NFPA.
And
Yeah,
National
yeah.
Fire.
it's not the environmental.
Yeah.
It's a fire protection.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
They're looking at the same thing. I'm like, well, what is it?
That's it, right, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's how he gave it to me.
All right, very good. So yeah, actually, if you recall, at our first joint meeting of the year with the Board of Selectmen, we talked about the financing of that particular equipment from the ambulance.
I do,
Yeah,
I do.
So that's good. Okay, so Article 25, recommended to pass over at town meeting. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $58,722.95 from free cash to purchase and install a cooled chiller compressor at the Whitman-Hanson Regional High School, including any and all costs relative thereto, to take any other action relative thereto. Proposed by the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. The Capital Committee voted to make recommendations because of insufficient information.
So not necessarily to pass over at town meeting, I think, to make the recommendation on town floor due to insufficient information. I think that's basically what they put on,
All of the articles for capital for the schools.
right, I may not have updated the, for the schools except for the Whitman school only. Hanson is not voting any Whitman-Hanson articles in May, and now they've said not in the fall either. So for us to vote them and them not to just
money
ties
just
up
sits
our
there,
money.
right?
Right, it doesn't make sense to do that, so.
Okay, so right now, Capital Committee is not recommending any of the capital articles for Whitman-Hanson Regional School District.
Well, they said they'll make it on the floor
For the high school.
for the high
For
school.
Duval Conley Middle School, yes, but for those shared costs of the high school that depend on Hanson agreeing to pay for it, since they're not going to be passing capital articles for the schools, why would we tie up our funds?
Right.
Well, they
Okay.
can't do that. They can't, like, how can they do that? Once it comes in as a recommendation from the school, just like anything else, they have to present it.
They can
Are they-
present it, but they're gonna recommend not to.
They're gonna recommend not to, so okay, that's fine. So we're gonna just do the same, I
It's
guess.
gonna be on the warrant, but motion is gonna be to pass over. Likely.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's fine, and because you, as long as you legally have it on the warrant, which could do that. But we still have to
All right.
vote for it.
So we know all of those articles because we've reviewed them with the capital committee, so I'm not gonna spend any time reading page 6. I'm going to move to page 7 and look at Article 29 and Article 30. Those fall into that category, would you say, Mary Beth?
Yes.
But Article 31 is a different school, right?
Yes.
So I'll read this one. See if the town votes to appropriate $37,408 to purchase and install a wireless system and wireless access point replacements at the Duval Elementary School, Conley Elementary School, and Whitman Middle School, including any and all related costs thereto, or take any other action in relation thereto. This is proposed by the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. Anything, Mary Beth?
Yes, it was either this one or 32, Kathy. You might remember that one of them there was an issue with, because in order to have the access points, they need for money from one of the other articles to happen. And I don't know if it was the access point of the UPS. I think it may have been the access.
The access points.
I thought
There
so.
was a concern that without updating the router,
Yeah, you have to do
Right.
why would we?
Right. So that one,
Yeah, you'd have
again,
both, but
Yeah.
so
you're
you
plugged
think
into the internet at that point.
recommended on the floor, I think.
Okay. Do you think you'll be talking about these at your meeting the next?
Yes, absolutely.
One of
Okay.
the frustrations was we didn't get backup from the school department that we asked for, so
On
Right.
everything.
we were holding, as Todd said, if I'm busting my hump to get the documentation that I'm supposed to, why don't we make everybody else? And I agree with him.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'll do the same standard, yeah. Okay, so then, I skipped over, at the bottom of page 7, we're at the bottom of,
We were at 7.
yeah, 7. Article 32. So does this have the same situation?
No,
Okay.
this one they would consider.
Yes.
To see if the town will vote to appropriate $10,622 to purchase and install an uninterruptible power source unit replacements at the Duval Elementary School. So
Conley,
Conley and Whitman.
I was just gonna say, you got the preposition "and." I think it's
Yeah,
like
that
you
needs
got
to go
multiple.
away.
Okay. Conley Elementary School and Whitman Middle School, including any of all related costs thereto, or take any other action in relation thereto. This is proposed by the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. Mary Beth.
So this one, the capital committee will still make their recommendation on the floor, but this is the one that they are considering because this does not involve Hanson's input on this.
Okay.
Okay, so that,
Okay. Makes sense.
yep.
All right. So then, page 8. Actually, the article itself is on the bottom of page 7.
It is.
Article 33 is to see if the town will vote to have its elected treasurer-collector become an appointed treasurer-collector of the town, subject to acceptance by the voters of the town, spelling there, at the next annual town election, or take any other action relative thereto. So this one's come up before.
Yeah, it seems,
Last year.
it seems like inappropriate if it's already voted down.
It passed at town meeting. It failed at the ballot, especially with, looking for an accountant and the treasurer collector. These are very important roles, and these really should be appointed. Most of them are in Plymouth County. Ken is on board. He wants to speak on this on the floor, and he's very much in favor of having this appointed.
Okay. So then it's going to go to the ballot box again. Is that correct? Yep. Okay. Community Preservation Committee requests, Article 34. To see if the town will vote to appropriate a reserve from fiscal year 25 Community Preservation Fund estimated annual revenues in the amounts recommended by the Community Preservation Committee for committee administration expenses, community preservation projects, and other expenses in fiscal 25, with each item to be considered a separate appropriation. So, appropriations from fiscal 25, estimated revenues for committee administrative expenses, a sum of money not to exceed 5%. Then it describes reserves from fiscal 25, estimated revenues for historic resource reserve, a sum of money representing at least 10% of fiscal 25 estimated revenues, plus at least 10% from the state match of fiscal 24 collections. For fiscal 25 estimated revenues for community housing reserve, a sum of money representing at least 10% of fiscal 25 estimated revenues, plus at least 10% from the state match of fiscal 24 collections. From fiscal 25 estimated revenues for open space reserve, a sum of money representing at least 10% of fiscal 25 estimated revenues, plus at least 10% from the state match of fiscal 24 collections, or take any other action in relation thereto. So the comment is that this article ensures that Whitman's community preservation accounts are compliant with the Community Preservation Act, which requires that a certain portion of CPA funds be set aside for open space projects, community housing projects, historical projects, and recreation projects. In addition, it sets aside money for the administrative expenses of the Community Preservation Committee. So that was item number 1. And item number 2 is to see if the town will vote to transfer from the Community Preservation Historic Resource Reserve balance a sum of $1,100 to fund plaques for surveyed historic sites in Whitman, or take any other action relative thereto. The comment provided by the Whitman Historical Commission: the WHC intends to supply property owners of historic property identified in our survey with a copy of their survey and a plaque to indicate the history of the property. And 3, to see if the town will vote to transfer from the Open Space Resource Reserve balance a sum of $30,000 to fund an open space and recreation plan for the town of Whitman, or take any other action relative thereto. So the explanation provided by the Board of Selectmen's office: the open space and recreation plan will allow Whitman to maintain its quality of life and ensure the best of the built and natural environments. The town wants to ensure that its planning efforts are consistent with state and federal planning requirements to remain eligible for appropriate grants. That is Article 34. A mouthful. That.
I think in prior years we split those into a couple of articles, the appropriation and the other projects. I don't know if there's
But this is how it came through from
Yeah.
CPA exactly, but we can do whatever and just let CPA know that it's
I don't think any would be controversial, but might be easier to read.
right. So we can restructure that. This is how it
The explanations are good. That is a little bit wordy, though.
Are these,
Good luck to
as
Mike.
they submitted it
are
Like
these
for
the
the
only two
moderator.
grants that were requested? Of the
Yeah,
C-
the only two that were requested.
this year. Yeah, last year we had so many.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, moving on, Article 35. To see if the town will vote to amend the general and zoning bylaws of the town of Whitman with gender-neutral wording. So this one probably doesn't look
Doesn't have any
for
money.
No.
under our,
Doesn't need us.
yeah. Article 36, a need-based real estate tax exemption amount increase.
So, is there not a cost to that? I mean, there's signage, there's potentially letterhead and things like that. There must be a cost associated with doing that.
The general bylaws and zoning bylaws will need to be updated, changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board.
But you're just saying like letterhead. I think you'd probably use up your resources that you have now and not expend new.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say there'd be a large capital.
All right, so I mean, you could just throw it all away and buy new, which could be costly.
Yeah, that would be
Right.
costly. I wouldn't recommend that.
Hey, we're still using those envelopes, right?
That's right. And the pens.
Take a look at our envelopes.
Yeah.
Will you? Look at it.
The Historical Commission is going to be interested in those very shortly.
George Washington slept on
I
them.
love how quiet the women are on this particular issue.
Yep.
Oh.
All right, so, Article 36, a need-based real estate tax exemption amount increase. To see if the town will vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 17D, to increase the exemption amount granted to eligible seniors to $350, adjusted by the COLA percent thereafter. The approved amount by vote to be effective for exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2024, or take any other action relative thereto. Proposed by the Board of Assessors. Mary Beth.
So there are several articles here proposed by the Board of Assessors, and I asked Wendy if she could provide just an impact, and I can certainly, because they don't know how many people this will affect, how many people will apply, so it's really hard to say this is going to cost us $8,000 or whatnot. But she did provide, you know, a little breakdown of the 5 articles. And I'll be happy to send this on to you, Rick.
Okay,
so
perfect.
You can share it,
Yeah,
okay? Rather than
excellent.
going into all
Yeah.
that.
That was going to be my question. It's a reasonable question to ask.
It
How
is.
will this impact? You know, when we're
It's
trying
hard to say exactly.
No doubt about it.
Yep.
Yeah. So the Article 37 is the senior citizen real estate tax exemption. Article 38 is the senior citizens real estate tax exemption. Is that the same thing?
They're two different
income-based
philosophies.
versus
Yeah, they are,
estate-based.
17D and 41D.
Guess I'm gonna have to read them then. So 37 is to see if the town will vote pursuant to the provision of Mass General Law, Chapter 59, S5, Clause 17D, to increase the exemption qualifying maximum of the whole estate assets, including domicile, to $50,000. The approved provision by vote to be effective for exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2024. So, that is the whole estate assets provision.
And it has no eligible amount, so somebody could be a millionaire and just be a senior, or what is it?
No,
No, that's what-
the state asset can only be $50,000,
That's the gap.
excluding their house.
Maximum.
The maximum, okay, excluding the,
Okay, so, and we've got a dollar figure associated with this one in the email that we're gonna get, right?
Some explanation
Okay.
that I'll send on. Yes.
All right, so 38 is to increase the income-based senior citizen real estate tax exemption to see if the town will vote pursuant to the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 59, S5, Clause 41D, to increase the exemption qualifying maximum of gross receipts income for eligibility of unmarried senior taxpayers to $35,000, and for a senior married increase to $50,000, adjusted by the COLA percentage thereafter. The approved provision by vote to be effective for exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2024. And this is also proposed by the Board of Assessors. So that gives you the eligibility for gross receipts. And then the next one,
Before you go further.
yes, John. Yeah.
As far as the exemptions, is it my understanding that if somebody gets, in effect, like an abatement, we don't collect that money in any way, shape, or form,
yes.
so it's lost revenue?
Yes,
That is correct.
Right. It is a cost.
So there is a cost.
Now, has there been any discussion about the state provision that some towns have accepted, which doesn't necessarily fit our picture, but would say, okay, we'll give this older person an exemption for low income, but what doesn't get paid goes back into the general
circuit
pool
breaker.
of people who are eligible to pay property tax, and that will be funded as everybody else taking an equal piece of it.
Is he talking about circuit breaker?
Is that a circuit breaker kind of provision you're talking about?
Because that's done.
Well, you sent us that magazine.
You said this.
Oh, don't talk about that.
John, he doesn't read what he sends you. He doesn't read what he sends you.
That has nothing to do with this meeting,
So,
John.
I didn't get it.
so I know circuit breaker. You pay it and then you're reimbursed through the state, so that it's actually paid, and then you file.
Right, so it's a different program altogether, right? Right. Did we talk about that before? You brought it
I
up.
have. I wanted to know if the numbers were similar to circuit breaker. We were doubling down on it.
Is there any information in the email regarding that?
On which,
On the topic of an alternative to the,
Is there any way that we can get reimbursements for anything like payment in lieu of taxes, almost? Some sort of reimbursement from the state for any sort of discounts for aging in place
Yeah, so, you
something
know,
for aging in place?
so every year, the Board of Assessors puts forth in Gateway on the Mass Department of Revenue every abatement that they have granted for that fiscal year. There's a formula. I'm not privy to exactly what that formula is, and it depends on the clause. Veterans, there is a higher rate of reimbursement, but there's a formula. So you put in for X amount of dollars, and then you receive back from the state, not that full amount that you put in, but a portion of it, and it's based on a formula that the state has.
I remember, is it 80% or 70% for veterans? I remember $750 is the, or 7,000 or 7, I'm thinking.
Nope, within the whole veterans category, there are subcategories
Okay.
depending on the disability that is
The
assigned to that
what
veteran.
level are they? 100%? Are they 50%? Or, okay.
Correct, yeah, the degree of disability.
So we're doing that now?
It's
Oh, it's always been done.
Yeah, okay.
similar to like the schedule of.
John, does that answer your question?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's not totally lost
100%
income.
like 4,000.
No.
It's looking for income at the
No,
moment.
nope.
Right.
So all of them, all of the clauses that we, give an exemption to gets forwarded into the gateway system, and then there is a reimbursement to the town.
So it's a formula, it's not dollar for dollar?
No, it's not.
Yeah, so,
So
We wouldn't
it's some
expect-
lost income, some reimbursed.
There is.
right, okay.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question, John?
yeah.
Thank you very much. So Article 39 addresses the eligibility of unmarried senior taxpayers for the whole estate assets to $50,000 and for a married senior taxpayer to increase to $65,000. The approved provision by vote to be effective for exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2024. So that's another one that we get some backup information in the email that's going to get forwarded for Article 39.
Is that the correct clause? Because it's the same clause as 38, which is income-based.
So I think, so
The first
without
two
it
are
in front of me, so
17.
they're addressing two components within one clause.
Really?
The income and your assets,
Okay.
because there are these two variables that are criteria that you have to meet.
Yeah, I'm just looking at saying,
No,
no,
but
we
you're
want to
right,
make sure
you're
we have the right citation.
So couldn't you
Yeah, that's
merge the
exactly
two,
when I was reading
36
it
and
too.
37 together and 38 and 39 together?
thought it wasn't
37,
income.
Same situation, Mike.
Yeah, oh, you're right.
That's what I was wondering with that, and that's what they had mentioned.
Yeah.
That's how it was submitted.
Oh, okay, so you can't merge the two?
Yeah, they're different enough in the wording underneath it. I just figured, normally they would put separate clauses for everything, because that's what they like to do.
That's how lawyers make their money.
They buy the word and buy the clause. Yeah.
Okay, Article 40, Family Housing Modification. To see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 59, S5, Clause 50, to provide an exemption on real estate taxes up to $500 to provide housing for a person 60 years or older who is not the owner. This exemption will terminate when the premises is no longer occupied by such elderly person in need of housing. The said exemption will be available as of July 1st, 2024, or take any other action relative thereto. So is that a new one, or is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a new one. Yeah, we're trying to get people into houses.
Brand new, and I
Brand
think it's
new.
sort of like an in-law situation.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to speak for the assessor, but that's my assumption.
Yeah.
So if somebody is living with their parent or...
Yeah, it's like
living-
an older parent
As long
moving.
as they don't own the house.
Yeah, as long as they're not the owner.
I feel like I need to know more about this, because there's a lot of ways to do a workaround and not...
It's trust, put the house in trust, you don't own it anymore.
Oh,
Is-
maybe
I
that's
don't know.
one that
Is
you
that-
could
is
do.
there-
That's an interesting...
How is the
I'm gonna
trust
need to
in-
know more about this.
So I think the exemption does not want to go to the homeowner,
Let's go to the...
the family member that the homeowner is bringing in.
Yeah, that sort of give... They could also give a landlord that exemption as well. You could end up giving landlords the exemption that,
Yeah, round up a bunch of people over 60 and
Yeah,
herd them in.
come on down. Yeah, I mean, that's a
It
little...
needs something.
Buffet at 5.
Yeah, we aren't really benefiting the tenant, I guess, for this one.
All you need to
I
do
need
is
more
serve Jello.
information.
Really, you're all set. Just
It'll get Rick there.
Not specific to this one, but to the Articles 36 through really 41, but I'll mention here. If you remember at our classification hearing, if you watched the recording, the Board of Assessors said that they're going to make an effort to try to find more of these opportunities, understanding the increased pressure on taxpayers, particularly seniors and low-income people.
Yep.
And I think this speaks volumes to them going to those efforts. Most of these votes increased either the amounts of the abatements, the income levels, or the asset levels. And they looked at all surrounding communities as we've
But
talked
it's all
about times.
seniors, isn't it?
No, 41 addresses veterans.
Veterans,
And
Well, there's no families here. I think Kathy Atina said last week, or last meeting, one thing.
Oh,
you've
yeah,
got
middle
poor
income
families.
people, yeah.
We're pulling from their schools, and we're making them pay extra. Like, come on, guys. Who hates kids this much? Please, who hates families this much? Let's look holistically, except for you.
Baby steps, Rosemary.
Let's look holistically.
we're going to start somewhere.
Okay, we're gonna.
So good point, Justin. I think that, this is a
Rick,
good
I'm not
initiative.
done. I was not done speaking. We have something called disparate impact. It is a law. You cannot target a select group. You have to serve them all equitably. Disparate impact is really sensitive when you are dealing with what's called protective classes. Families are a protected class. just
Rosemary,
like
I
seniors
don't
are.
think that is applicable to these
It
articles.
absolutely is. When every single tax deduction goes down here and all the services generally are pointed towards reducing
Right.
services for working families.
But it's not to say that can't be
I think that
added.
the lack of sensitivity is not distributed equitably between the different demographics is what I want to point out.
And what would you suggest we do with these articles?
Rick, if you want to have a conversation later, we can.
Point well taken.
All right.
Because I can roll them a certain way.
All right, so Article 41 is talking about Veterans Property Tax Work-Off Abatement Program. To see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 59S, 5N, which authorizes the Board of Selectmen to establish a Veteran Property Tax Work-Off Abatement Program, whereby a veteran or spouse of a disabled or deceased veteran may volunteer his or her services to the town and earn a reduction in his or her property tax bill. Said program will be available as of January 1st, 2025, or take any other action relative thereto. It's proposed by the Board of Assessors and the Veteran Services. So is there information on the implications for
No,
these
I
articles?
don't believe that I got information from the assessor or the veteran on that. I will say that there's a comment here, and it was a discussion that I had with the Board of Assessors, or with Wendy at the time, that this article will be effective July 1st. That's just a comment that I put in there. Effective July 1st, 2025. For fiscal 26 to coincide with the senior tax work-off program. The reason I have that is right now where the senior work, they work from July through June on a fiscal year, and they get it off, the money off their taxes in the following year. This one, they have in there that this will become available July 1st, 2025. But we don't want to have one senior work-off program working a fiscal year and then this veteran program working a calendar year. It makes sense to keep them all on
consistent.
the same schedule.
Yeah.
So I added that comment there. This is a draft, but I added that.
That makes sense. Get
Yeah,
them
it
on the
does.
same schedule. Yeah.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
That's a good
All right, and 42, Veteran Property Tax Work-Off Program limitations on wage hours tax credit amount to be determined.
that probably will be removed. I never received anything more after this original, these articles came forward. So this, we don't have any information on that.
Okay.
So I'll probably delete that one.
Okay, Article 43, Captain Allen Way. To
No
see.
money, well, there, excuse me.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, no money. Yep.
Well, no, that will add to our roads.
Okay.
Sorry.
So Article 44.
Rosemary's thunder.
I'm not going to read this, but if you look on page 10, 11,
Everybody complains the whole way, dragging by their
I'm sure it
nails.
goes on to the next one, right?
It is, I'm up to 15, 16, 17. Okay, so 18, 19. I would say, yes,
Wow.
no,
Pretty
let's
much,
see,
yeah.
18.
This is the MBTA Community Act?
Yeah, it goes to the beginning of page 19, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay, so is this one that we need to make a recommendation? Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
So everybody knows what this is about, but I would suggest as part of your homework assignment for next week,
I had one question.
read it and, yeah, you get a question related to one of the provisions.
Yes, it did. I did drop off something for 40Rs and 40, I think 40R, 40X, I think we talked about it.
Yep.
They are buildings that reimburse the schools.
Just
So,
the S.
yeah, the S's. So I didn't see it in when I had dropped it off after you had kindly given me the reprint. First of all, great job, guys, to get it on this article. I knew it took a little bit of pushing and, a little whining from some of us. But you got it on, so great job. But here I go, messing that up. 40R and 40S's can still be done under the 40Ds, like they're still allowed to be built or incorporated, even if we don't include them in the language. Is that correct?
It's, I think it's on this one. So the town passed over an opportunity to fund a plan for 40R back in 2016. It was an article town meeting. But I think it was a missed opportunity, and
Really
talking
was.
about revisiting it now. But
We don't.
it's multiple overlay districts. So this MBTA communities is one overlay district over the general zoning, which is in that area general business industrial mostly. 40R would be another overlay district. So ideally, we probably want to put together like a flow chart. If you're building this building,
You do that
these
one.
are your possible zones.
Okay, so we could still revisit it, meet the law, and then come back and revisit it to add the 40.
Kathy and I are actually working on a potential grant for 40R development.
Wonderful, thank you so much. That's great. Now, just so the committee knows what 40 are, it was just really good that it does. We're supposed to have diversity within our plan, and sometimes, there's always a concern that one demographic might cost more than the other. It offsets by a large amount. It's meant to offset. We'll see how that's funded, of course. A large amount gives back to the schools to reimburse for children that go into houses. So it provides family housing, kind of, I guess, a sense like Hog Memorial would be a good example of a historical version of houses that were meant for family neighborhoods or whatever. But it also pays back the school, the town, to reimburse anybody who might cost a little bit more.
So I can read directly from the information you provided me,
Oh yeah,
if you would like.
thank you.
New property and excise, the reimbursement equals the cost of educating students living in new housing in smart growth districts, less an amount equal to the sum of new property and excise taxes in the smart growth district multiplied by the average percent of total local spending on education across the Commonwealth, which is about 52%. And B, any increases in other state education funding that is directly a result of these new students. As a practical matter, foundation communities are not eligible for 40S funding. So those are the points.
And then it has some dollar amounts on one of the other ones. I think it's like 7 on average, certain amount per student.
So, good information. Thank you for providing.
You're welcome. That was Lisa Green that cued me on that. So I give credit where credit's due.
Okay, so we moving on to Article 45, Citizens Petition, Whitman's Veterans Discretionary Fund. Rosemary, you know anything about this?
I do, but I think that I can't vote on it. I worked with Adam Gunn, and he had pointed out a few other towns that have very successfully done this. We're getting letters from those towns. They use the same language. I know there were some concerns with how this is going to be done, but no town that I've worked with, or nobody's had an issue. They're all willing. We can get people to write in or speak on it if we need to.
Okay.
But
so
that's it.
I was just going to say, but just so I don't have to read it, everybody, this is also part of the weekly reading for you to get familiar with this particular article.
It really isn't a lot of money. It's just enough to help for emergency situations. It meets the laws that we'll end up having to pay in our taxes.
Okay, so that is Article 45. Article 46 is at the bottom of...
Yeah, here's a question.
So I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Just maybe for Mary Beth. I don't believe we can amend a citizen petition before town meeting. We have to make an amendment before. There's just references to town managers, assistant town managers.
Right.
Things that Abington has, but we...
A what? It has this.
Town manager or
I can make an amendment on the town hill floor as the writer.
Well, you
So-
could amend it now, and then it
so-
could be written correctly.
so
she's
can
got
you-
10 signatures. I don't think we can amend it until town meeting.
Oh,
So
Or
I
get another one, but...
I could do that if you want. But I can do an amendment on town hall floor. And if you want to send me that amendment,
Yes.
Which
I'd
part
be
needs to
happy-
be amended?
Everywhere it
if
says
you-
town manager.
Anyway, it's a town manager, yeah, sorry about that.
Assistant
Like,
town
you can
manager.
see that I literally copied
Yeah,
it.
it's copied from Abington.
Okay, I didn't mess around, I used the
It's even their
town.
What does
fonts.
it say Abington right here?
It might have. I had to go and kind of quickly do that. So anywhere that we want to do that, or if there's updates to this that you want to change on the town hall floor, please email it, and I will review it with Emgen to see if it will affect the process of actually, because it's really just the goal of making sure that we have that money for that.
No, the only concern that I had with this was checks and balances with one person taking in money, and the auditors weighed in and said, same thing. It's just, or the accountant as well, that in a one-person office, there's no checks and balances. When money comes in, it's cash.
So Adam is a one-person office as well.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying, I'm not
Yeah.
speaking to Abington, I'm
Yeah.
just here, we like, checks and balances. I mean, the money is counted when it gets
He
up
has
to
only
the
one
treasurer
person
and
now.
collectors, but that's the only
He did
concern.
have a part-time for a period of time, but it is such a. I mean, I can see where you want checks and balances.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here not as finance committee member, as step back, and I'm sort of talking it. But is it? Do we override the importance of having this account? Talking to veterans agents, it really does help. It gives them that ability to really help. They're sort of, in a sense, when a veteran is coming to their office, they really are at they need it that day most likely. It's not something that we can kind of get caught up in red tape, that fire that night, or some sort of housing. It's such a small amount of money that really, I would, since we haven't seen the problem, we have an honest person that we have in the office. I would hesitate to be caught up on the what if somebody goes dark,
But we had it in that town, so.
Yes, we have.
I lived it.
I don't think there's any problem,
Yeah, but we had-
in my mind, with the
collections
town
of-
implementing fiscal controls that
Right.
are already in place. I don't think it's gonna.
Okay, the
dilute
reason
labor.
they have the account, not that I have no problem with fiscal control. I have a problem with the inability to quickly provide the services needed. And that is what the law requires of the veteran officers.
Well,
And
this still would have to go through a process to cut a check to the, whatever
it
it
would be a
is.
credit card, it would be a separate account, I think, if we read it.
I don't think I never started.
Not like a petty cash drawer.
Yeah, that's what they use over in Abington, they have it set up.
It says maybe in the form of cash or check, it says.
Yeah.
Coming in, those
Coming
are
in,
donations.
right.
For the
But
donations.
disbursements,
Disbursement records.
funds must go directly to pay for the item services needed.
Well, like I said, we'll have a conversation if you'd like to sit down and go over this, but ultimately, we want to give some, we know that budget's tight. We know it is. And when we read over the requirements of a veteran officer, it is to provide, if they have a family that's house burns down, they have to provide housing that night. And right now, our veterans officer would have to take that out of her own credit card and then get it reimbursed. And we want to make sure that whoever's in that position can handle that.
Well, the
So-
only, so that's a new twist from anything I read here. To me, she would get donations in, turn them over to the collector's office. They'd go into the general fund, like all money, and to get money
She just
out,
would be
it would
back.
have to be on a warrant.
No.
Where does it say she
It's an
can use a
immediate.
debit
A gun
card?
Gun does it immediately. It is her account. She controls it.
That's an
That's-
issue for me, but
Is that
I mean,
kind of like
but-
those revolving accounts? How does recreation, like something similar to that? How do they handle their
This. We will talk. If you know what we can do, we'll try to get something together with Adam
Sounds like-
and the other
sounds like
towns. It's not an issue with the other towns, so maybe talking to somebody who's utilizing those accounts.
but I would want our accountant,
In
so
on
we
that
don't do any
conversation.
side accounts that people can just expend on their own. That goes against every,
The others lose it.
lose it.
Well, it does say all accounting forms for donations and distribution shall be approved by the
Correct.
town accountant.
Correct.
They would be approved.
Yeah.
They would have an ability to use it more.
And they could do
readily.
an agency or something to get the check out quicker, but
Yeah,
it would
that's
have to be
something.
through the warrant, no
We're going to
debit
see how.
cards.
We're going to see how. Well, I think they do have it over. in
Right, that
Abington.
would be,
They would.
an
So we
issue.
don't have that we don't have the ability for anybody to spend out of their accounts here in Whitman at all?
Yes, through the warrant process.
Okay.
All right,
Either
Ralph.
way, that's
Ralph
going to
has a
be,
question.
we'll go over with Adam, okay?
I just have.
Hold on, John.
For Rosemary.
Hold on, John.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wait 1 second. Ralph has got the floor.
All right. I'm just looking at this, and I talk about the definition of a veteran. Now, I know they were still having that legislation pending at the State House over, it was called the HEROES Act, and I wasn't sure has that ever been approved or not.
Not yet.
Because otherwise, it could change all this. Because at the time, there was a lot of controversy. You could have somebody who spent 20 years in the Guard, they're not a veteran. But yet somebody who only spent 60 days on active duty, that's a veteran. So the HEROES Act was to eliminate all that BS. And if you were actually in uniform, either reserve, guard, or active, for a certain number of days, you're a veteran. Case closed.
So the Veterans Act, it amends the laws that are listed here. So when those laws are amended, it would go right into this.
Right, but if it hasn't been approved yet, then some of this may be wrong.
It would be it would refer to the
Definition of a
the
veteran
definition of a veteran
in its current state.
in its current state and in its flexible state. So this would amend for anybody that the Veterans Office services, which would ultimately fall under what you're talking about.
Well,
So-
this sets a definition, right? The
Yeah.
third part. A veteran shall be defined as someone who has served in any branch of the U.S. military and was discharged under conditions other than dishonorable.
Yep. So it's updated to the
Are the
HEROES
reserves
Act.
considered a part of the United States military?
They're about to be.
Yes.
That they are already, though.
Well, first of all, it depends on which source you're talking to. If you're talking to the VA, Veterans Administration, the Guard and Reserves was not veterans, not unless they had been active duty prior.
Right.
Or afterwards. So hopefully this is going to eliminate all that and make it simple.
It's been updated to, I believe, the HEROES Act definition. It keeps it broad for that because that was part of the conversation that we had.
Okay, now we'll go to you, John.
My only comment to Rosemary is to take this project and run the heck out of town hall. Because just listening to whether it's the definition of a veteran or it's the convoluted process that you're trying to give somebody that's about to be homeless some kind of monetary break to get them through a bad patch in a week or two.
2
It
nights.
ain't happening in the town business.
Yeah, and that's why that's why it was something that the funds are not coming from town hall. The funds would be coming from a separate entity from fundraising and others privately. It's because we weren't funding it from town hall. We weren't sort of funding that line well enough to meet the needs and the services that we proposed this alternative so that we can handle our budgets, we can handle everyone, and create still the safety net that's needed.
Well, my point isn't so much that
It's just what other towns have done. That's all.
Let him finish,
we
please.
need to get it away from the town. I don't know why it's involved in the town. We have charitable organizations within the town. The one that I'm familiar with is like the St. Vincent de Paul Society. That doesn't take a warrant on or an article or whatever to get money that they've collected to go to somebody that's in desperate need. So I would say look to social organizations within the town
So,
to keep track of it.
okay,
Whether
you want them
it's
to
the VFW
keep it track of it.
or the American Legion or some religious volunteer group, whatever. But I wouldn't take
Okay.
this up with town government.
Okay, because the law requires us to service. That means the veteran wouldn't know. That would end up scattering the ability for the veteran to get the service. That means they would have to sort of roll the dice and Whereas there's one place, there's one person that they're supposed to interface with. There's one, and I think I said this at town meeting, it'd be good to know, the fire chief to know to call the veterans office, and the veteran office can do something. Instead of saying, oh, I'm going to wait till Sheila wakes up, when Sheila does this, and 4 days later, and that person's sleeping in their car with their 2 kids. You know, that's what we're trying to prevent. Now, if I wrote this myself, and it had never done, it was just conceived by me, John, I would agree with you. I'd second. But because it is functioning, and it is working very well in other towns, I think maybe the bend should happen on the town end. Because we should be servicing, or we can't really fill that line. So maybe we bend and we say, okay, how are you doing this? And I'll sit down with you as separate and work to merge those two things. But this, something like this, something more fluid has to happen.
I have a point of order here, which is we shouldn't be discussing this article. This is for the floor, right?
Yeah,
We're on
this
the
isn't.
finance committee. Let's talk about the financial aspect. I think the one thing that we've raised so far is where's the funding, how will it be accounted? That's questions that need to be answered. So that I just want to put that out there. I think we've drifted.
Yeah,
I
agree.
I will get the letters from the other places and send that to finance committee. These are such small amounts that, I mean, the presumption is that the veterans agent would steal it, essentially. And
All right, Mary Beth?
No, it's just checks and balances everywhere. But my other point is that the town shouldn't be doing fundraising according to, accountant and auditors. Fundraising is usually done by Friends of the Park.
Oh, yeah.
Friends of the Library, not the town veterans office. So if there would be a Friends of the Veterans or whatever that would do the fundraising and not through that office. That's all.
yeah,
I have to
this
agree
was
that the
a-
principle of
is-
this, right, the principle of this is good.
Yeah.
But the implementation is going to be very difficult.
Okay.
It just seems.
Because the implementation has been done without a problem.
Well, listen to
I would-
what the other towns have to say.
Yeah,
But
please
right now, I
listen
don't think.
before you have a conception that's different than what's the other towns have done this. It's worked. Why would there be no reason to not talk and listen to those other towns?
Okay, send us the information.
If the conception is right and doing this now, as far as the fundraising goes, the fundraising is not done by the town.
Right.
The fundraising is done by separate individuals that want to write a check for the town. So one thing that an individual is willing to do is put a dumpster in a parking lot, and then they give the veteran $600 a month. A local veteran has been talking about, not a dumpster, a clothing depository. That will have two benefits. That will end up having the benefit of not having the clothing in our trash, lowering that bill, and also gives money back for veterans. These are the sorts of things that are sort of private people have already talked
All right,
about.
I think that we can take the time to read this in its entirety, as I mentioned about 20 minutes ago, and then formulate questions and get information, follow up, and then make our recommendation based on that. So the last article is Article 47.
Oh, no,
No.
it's a
Oh,
placeholder.
sorry.
It's at the very bottom of the previous page.
Nice
Oops,
try.
sorry. Article 46.
Almost made it.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate outside the levy limit of Proposition 2.5, so-called, a sum of money to be added to Article 2, Budget Line 21, the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District operating expense, voted this date, thereby approving the district's submitted budget for fiscal 25, provided that this additional appropriation shall be contingent on approval of a 2.5 levy limit. Maybe proposition in there, maybe.
Maybe.
2.5 levy limit override under General Laws, Chapter 5920, Section 21CG. Mary
So
Beth.
I just put that in as a placeholder. The last time we did this was 2016. I just took the article, the ballot question, the information. I gave it to, I met the other day with Jeff and Beth and Carl and Hanson and whatnot. But it's just the same language. And I just copied it on there, threw it in as a placeholder. And like I said, this is a draft. That may not even be in there. So
Perhaps we can get bond counsel to take a look at it and see if there's anything that needs to
Yeah.
add.
yeah, I mean, it was exactly what was, well council looks
remember-
at all of these. Don't
Yeah.
forget, these all go to council.
I'm just looking back at the appropriation for our new DPW building and the problems we had with the warrant article with that, that's all.
Yeah, but that warrant article, you have to, let's touch on that quickly. That article, what happened with that is Bond counsel said that either one of two things should have happened, that the entire ballot question should have appeared in Article 1 of the annual town warrant, or the town clerk should have posted a separate ballot for an annual town election, neither of which have ever been done in the town of Whitman for an annual town election, ever. So for the middle school, for the special, that was on a special, the middle school, so the wording for the ballot question was not in the warrant, but the town clerk posted a separate ballot question. So she posted that. But on an annual town election, because our annual town warrant calls for the annual town election in Article 1, going back 50 years, 100 years, they've never put the actual ballot question in Article 1. Going forward, I said, we'll do both. Don, you
Sure.
posted anyway, we'll put it in Article 1. But it's never been done. So we went back and said, well, how, there aren't many debt exclusions that we do. And the police station one didn't involve money, so bond counsel didn't look at that. Another one was the high school. And so it's never been done this way. And bond counsel said, well, we probably weren't your bond counsel 25 years ago. So it was not that Don didn't post to or that we didn't include it. It wasn't a mistake or an oversight. It's never been done that way because
Right.
our article for annual town meeting calls for our election within the warrant.
And again, we're not looking to assess blame. We're concerned about the fiscal exposure to the town.
Right. And
Right
you
now.
saw the letter
Yes.
today from Allison
Yep, we
Sullivan.
made copies. They're all on the table.
And where it is in the process.
Just so,
Rosemary.
past practices play a big part in any municipal, like, if the past practice has been one way and the bond council has now changed the way, the past practice, have you talked to the attorneys? The past practice plays a large part in, validating. If it has a financial component to this ask that's sort of askew from what's been allowed in past practice, and the bond council is insisting that we do this, and it costs a financial impact, there should be some contact with the attorneys to say, hey, listen, this has been past practice, and it should be a real consideration, and it should be allowed to pass.
Well, I think the hope is, right, that we get the green light letter and there is no litigation.
I don't think,
Yeah.
and I am hopeful that it's going to go tomorrow into a session and then go to the Senate. Once it goes to the Senate,
That's not
they
what we're
just
talking about.
will have to vote favorably and send it to the governor.
Oh,
No.
one
That's
one
where we
reading.
are.
Three readings.
There's three.
readings.
Mr.
Again
Anderson,
on that one?
And we go again.
Mr. Anderson,
Okay,
wait a
but
minute. Is this
she
article
had-
about that? This
Even
article is
is
about the
hoping that
override.
maybe by the end of this week.
It is a discussion we're having tonight, so
You're interesting.
what do you want to do?
I want to get onto the article.
We
That's
will.
a good point.
You gotta be somewhere?
No, but if you sidetrack, it's fine. But if anybody else
Okay.
doesn't, sir.
You
Let's
brought
go
it up,
back.
so
You
I
brought
did.
it up, and Mary Beth
I
was
brought it
like
up. I'll take full responsibility. Let's
Thank you.
land the plane and
Thank
finish
you, land
this
the
article.
plane. I want to land the plane somewhere quickly.
So, Article 46, any further discussion on the
Yes.
override?
There was never a discussion on the override. There was just a discussion on the bond council. So let's start the discussion on the override. I am concerned that the override for only the school is on this without the school A voting, and no override for the town is on this. I already spoke earlier about disparate impact. If this goes forward, this has to go through three obstacles to be voted for an override in a time when an override has a slim chance of passing. This leaves only an impact for the schools. It leaves the impact nowhere else. That means if this doesn't pass, only children and working family services will be cut. That's it. Again, disparate impact.
This is a placeholder.
It shouldn't even be without the other. It shouldn't even be without the other. It shouldn't even be if the school hasn't even put that placeholder on. Additionally, the issue is our entire budget. It is not the school. When we have a levy amount, when we collect all the money, it's a pool. Our schools are no different. Our services for working families are no different than any other services for any other demographic. We've been drunk with the idea that they are. It's not. This again isolates. This is a guaranteed failure. A guaranteed. Nobody's going to vote this. A, because they have 1 million scared seniors from the last vote. We do. And then saying it's only kids is something I don't have to look at. We can't feed into that. We have to be far more responsible about every demographic in our town. This is an irresponsible move. It has to be, if there is going to be an override, it has to be brought back. I won't agree with this, and I'm going to say, this to me is where it's being sent where an override could die. It's not an honest proposal.
I feel really comfortable speaking up at town meeting, or obviously in the selectmen's meeting, as to financially why this is a school override.
I'm sure you have. We've heard you.
And I think that
I don't agree with anything you've said, though.
Can I just ask for clarification? Is this going to be the article, should the school agree to an override?
So, I met with the schools the other day, had a great conversation with both sides. They're calling a meeting, I believe, for next week. We discussed override. Nothing has been decided. It has to go in front of the school committee vote. This article was actually, I put that on there as a placeholder before I even met with the schools. It is the Board of Selectmen that would put forth this article.
Right.
So this is fine to put in there on a draft as a placeholder.
I agree. I agree.
But not without the other.
It's a placeholder.
Not without what other?
Not without an override for the entire town.
No,
If you're
no,
looking
no,
for an
no. You don't
override,
have to have an override for the town.
We have a workable budget for the.
That's right.
Right? What?
the workable budget that we have is using the levy and then assuming that that services for working families are not included in that levy when they are. The workable budget, basically, the school sent over a 5-year plan. They sent over, and we didn't put that. The way you're supposed to financially put things is you're supposed to do the schools first. We did our budget backwards, leaving them off to do things. Even in the beginning of the year, we were supposed to, the way best practices, if we were utilizing it, all that money that we had at the original town meeting was supposed to go into free cash. That did not. All of these things have sort of positioned the schools to be looking like they are the only problem. It isn't the truth. That's not true. All the budgets had some element of issue. And growth, there was growth all around. Go ahead, you're saying?
Sure. But the school assessed us a $2 million increase on $1.2 million in growth. Right? If we start with the schools, we start by cutting every department.
That's when you start having the conversations early with the schools. Okay, you have this. They sent in the 5-year plan. Hey, this 5-year plan, how about we take off the busing? We'll take off the things we can control and then move that. We know that a lot of these increases came from state issues that Maura Healey sort of is still grappling with the inflation rate. So we know that these are components. When you're doing an override that is not operational for a department is because you're adding something spectacular, you're adding a new program, you're doing something. There's nothing being really added here. There's just sort of maintaining services to prevent dysregulation. That's what they're doing with the therapists that are continuing on. We don't want to end up like Brockton, that's for
What
sure.
about the 2 administrators?
Those are the ones that we're talking about. Did we have 2 administrators? I didn't see 2 administrators added. Did you, Kathy?
There were.
They could.
And-
That's the adjustment the conversation
I'd
we
like a
should
little
have
more
had earlier.
information from them to allow the audit to be done that we've been trying to get done
Bingo!
for
I'd
4 or
love
5
that
years.
too. I'd love that too.
Get that done, and maybe we can look at that data and assess
But
it.
do you think we couldn't focus on every other department in the same way? Why is
Well, we
it just
could, but
this one?
the schools are getting a big piece of the pie.
We have had our school funding in the lower, the lower,
What at a
the
time?
lower
Getting off
5%.
One at a time.
5% in Massachusetts. We are funding our schools in the lower 5%. We at times with the third from the bottom,
Okay.
and still these same rally cries. At what point is it wrong?
Let me go to Sean Kane.
When we started the budget process in November, we've been trying to do a better job with forecasting. Still a work in progress, but we are getting better at it for sure. We we began with that, the revenue forecast. Right after that, we came together and Mary Beth put together her budget message. Her budget message was in line with that forecast. I think if you look consistently at the meetings that we've had and the discussions that we've had, and even where we're at today, I would be willing to bet that when we get to town meeting, her budget message will be very close to the budget, or one of the budgets that's presented. 5% and being pretty strict with department heads. That's what we've been trying to stay in line with the revenue forecast. You know, with that revenue forecast, the schools are asking for more than that, and they're getting pulled back on state aid, and it's a hard nut to swallow.
Forecast, we
That's the
just had
kind of
a thing with the
situation we're in,
assessors.
you know.
Yep.
So that is at least so you hear the process that we're trying to follow.
Yeah, understand. Yep.
And I just want to say, being on this committee for a long time, I still see it as progress because when I first came, and I don't know if when you guys were on, I remember there were times when we were telling the schools 2%, 3%. To get it up after the Madden report, to get it to at least committing 5%, that's a big step. We all struggle with, all the increases and everything else, but from my point of view, we're moving in the right direction. Were we in a good place before? Apparently not. However, we are moving in a positive direction.
I would give you that we're
Rosemary.
doing better.
Kathleen.
I just want to say first, I completely oppose a school-only override. I have, from day one, I haven't changed my position. I also want to point out that Whitman and Hanson are not the only towns looking at school budgets being decimated. Brookline is laying off 13 teachers. Hanover is going to be laying off. Hingham is going to be laying off. So we're not unique. The schools were the beneficiary, as the towns were, of federal funds. And they knew the federal funds were going to dry up, but I believe the schools used the ESSER funds appropriately, providing services for children, not buying stuff. Providing services for children at a time when they went through something that none of us, I grew up during the polio epidemic, so occasionally I got to stay home, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't 4 years of wearing a mask and every other day you might go to school. These kids have experienced an incredible disruption to their social, and I hate to use social emotional learning, but their social and educational progress. So I'm not going to fault the schools for continuing to advocate for using local funds now to maintain those ESSER positions. The interventionists, some of which I believe are required by the new laws, as Rosemary frequently says, are there any new laws that have enacted? The schools, I believe it's called MTSS.
Yes,
they have to provide that. That's not like, oh, it's really fun and it's really effective, let's just keep it. They have to. So I really envisioned something as painful as last year was, something similar to last year's negotiations, happening earlier, not happening on April 28th, when the week before town meeting I was in North Carolina visiting my sister, calling in to participate. I really did hope that there would have been some movement by the schools. Jeff had some scenarios that, in my opinion, did not impact the quality of the education of the children, but it wasn't forthcoming. And I'd still like to see that process take place, where I see Article 47, I'm reading between the lines, Mary Beth, but I think that we're going to have to use free cash to close the budget gap for the town. Am I wrong about that?
As of today, there's 164,000. I think we're looking. Last year we used 443 or some odd.
So I would be much more comfortable with that process. You said you had a good conversation with
Very
Jeff.
good. They're meeting next week.
Yeah, I know that they're posting for a Monday.
Oh, they
have
are?
to meet on
Okay.
Monday. So
Yeah.
they have a Monday meeting posted. I guess this
Great
is a
meeting.
This is a placeholder, so it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
No.
But I want to go on record as saying that the schools should not be held out as the entity that needs funding. I think that lots of other departments have experienced growth, and I support them.
Right.
So I don't want to cut the positions that I heard you mention last.
I don't want to.
I know you don't. It would
Nobody
be
does.
close the library, for crying out loud. No.
For the kids, right?
So
No, that's for the seniors,
so-
not everybody.
So yes, many departments, if not every, experienced the benefits of infusion of federal funds, ARPA or CARES, and we were able to grow as a town and we were able to grow as a school department. And I really want continued negotiations and discussions between you and Lisa Green and the school department heads. As I said at our joint meeting, I just felt like people were playing chicken. Like, are you kidding? We're not bending. We're asking for every penny we started with. And it's like, please don't do that. Please move a little bit. And then someone else can move a little bit. But it's past the point. And I appreciate how hard you've worked. So it's not, Mary Beth, how could you possibly suggest this? You have to suggest something. I just don't support anything that sets the schools up as it's a potential for failure. People will not support a schools only override.
So let's talk about a little bit about the fact that this is a draft, right? And this is a place setting.
Draft.
So let's not be all keyed up about this one article, but it is a placeholder. I'm personally not in favor of a school override either, and I think I made it clear on multiple occasions. But this is what we have in the warrant right now as a place setter. So
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
You say you're not in favor of a school-wide override because you think it's not going to pass.
No, that's not why I'm not in favor of school. I'm not in favor of school override because the school has not indicated that they're in favor of a school override.
Okay.
That's where I am.
Moving forward, though,
If they decided that was the case, then I'm all for it.
aside from whether they decide or not, for us moving forward on the town side, we're saying is we want to stay within the budgetary limits and constraints that keep us without having to have an override. We're willing to kind of hold that line. We're willing to do that.
That's our job.
Okay, so that's why it's not a town override. The schools are saying we want more than what's, that limit. We want more. That's why
it's a negotiation. Right?
Exactly. That's why it's a school override.
No, don't
See what I'm saying? So I think that's being lost somewhere in this translation. I know some people don't want it to be a school override because it's less likely to pass, and you said you don't want it to be a school override because they haven't necessarily asked for it. We're saying out of necessity and mathematics and budgetary, we're willing to hold the line on the town side. If they're asking for more, then that's their prerogative, and therefore it's a school override. Mm-hmm. That's the rationale.
It is a rationale. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just don't submit to it. That's all. That's simple as that. Yeah. Rosemary.
Math can be used in all kinds of ways to tell all kinds of stories. And one of the components to this is, did you grow within the one, and Justin said, well, hey, they're not growing within their pie slice of the thing. But we've got to remember, we've also grown other departments. Say last year, they didn't get their entire slice of pie, right? Essentially, when you're looking at I think if everybody's looked at the Department of Revenue website, that's kind of how I visualize this. So they didn't get that. That shrunk a little in as we grew last year, and that was filled in by other departments and other financials.
We're over 5% for the school last year.
Yes.
No,
Hold on, we got people waiting.
First, they have consistently, but not consistently been meeting that 5%. It was 4 point something. But even at that, that 5% is an arbitrary number, right? Because as you pointed out, hey, our growth was, this $1 and the school asked us. But guess what? When the growth was larger and you had more, you didn't invest in to fill in anywhere or to meet the needs. It was always just this amount. The 5% was given for it, what we needed until we needed an override for the town. That was a capital override that never happened. That was the Madden's report. That's really what we've sort of pushed into that budget that would have organically let at least 5%. And there's a book, and I have to find it, and it talks about finance in the laws, and it does say expect 5%. That means lower than 5%. That's how we got to the bottom third in Massachusetts. So Madden's report was until we got an override. It was only recommended for 3 years. You can't sustain that as a permanent thing, and we've tried to. But it's no surprise that this has happened.
Okay, Mike Warner, then John.
Yep. So I guess I read that a little differently. The article does not bother me because what we're saying is this is my interpretation of what I'm reading here, is we're going to ask for that Prop 2.5 override specifically for a line item for the schools. We're not putting it in saying, just override, we're going to, everybody enjoy. Now, that's not what we're doing with this article. There'll be the two sides to it as well. There's the first one, which is we're asking for it. We're asking for it right now for a very specific purpose. Then, of course, you have the actual Prop 2.5 override as well. And the way that, if I remember correctly, that law is written, and once you've overridden it, it's overridden. That's it. You don't have to go back after that. So that allows us to look at, maybe it's not 5% next year, maybe it is a 6%, whatever it is, it allows us to look at it differently. But, to say what you said was there's some handcuffs on us right now through that legislation. It's there. So I just wanted to put that thought
It's
process
not the
out there.
same override.
John?
Well, two things quickly. The last two sentences of the Madden report, if you look at the last two sentences specifically, it references the switch to the statutory method, or the potential switch to statutory method. And it said that would have a drastic change in the financial, basically, forecast of the town. Meaning, what he's forecasting would change drastically if we switch to the statutory method. Clearly, as far as I'm concerned, changes the nature of the potential override. Also, if you look at next year with the school enrollment, it looks like it's going to stabilize. It's a projection, but if the school enrollment stabilizes, that changes the nature of a potential override as well. The third thing, with the 5%, if we're under the restrictions of Proposition 2.5, then obviously we can only grow at the 2.5 with new growth. The new growth then provides for some ability to pay above 2.5 to like the schools for the 5. And as a simple rule of thumb, I mean, it doesn't take a genius, where we're going to get any amount over 2.5. The only amount coming in over 2.5 is in new growth. So if we have a little bit of new growth, that's pretty much going to the schools. Everything else for the town has to stay at 2.5.
Yeah.
So that's the basic rule of thumb that he's giving.
But look at these other budgets, John. These other budgets are not 2.5%. They're 12, they're
The only thing I would
15,
say
they're
is
2%
16.
too. It
The only
wasn't
thing I would say
2.5.
about that, if you look back at the last 5 years, the schools have been over 5% the
Right.
last 5 years. No question.
Yeah.
When you can't look at one department within the town and say, look at how much they've grown. If you look at departments within the school budget, there's certain departments that have gone up, but it's the aggregate of all. So we're looking at the aggregate of everything on the town side, and then the aggregate of everything on the school side.
This
You
looks
know what I
like a
mean?
way to
So
cut back on
that
schools.
has to stay within those limits. That doesn't mean certain departments like technology, we added a second person and it was needed, and obviously that department increased. But the aggregate of all of them has to stay obviously within the 2.5, otherwise where the hell are we getting the money?
Right. So in my mind, just the 2.5 override was something that when 2.5 legislation was created, they understood that the need would be there for corrections. And that's why there's the provision for a Proposition 2.5 override. I believe we need an operational override in order to get our budget into a sustainable position for the next 5 years.
I agree with that.
You're not talking about what's going to happen next year or in fiscal 27 if we do what we're doing here, right? This isn't going to help us in 2027.
We stay within the 5%.
Let me just finish. Because all the other departments are growing as well. Well beyond the 2.5%, right? So you can look at other towns around us. They are proposing Proposition 2.5 and passing, understandably, for sustainable budgets to get to the point in time where Mary Beth refers to when we lose that
Pension.
liability, right?
Liability.
So that's 6 or 7 years away. There is no way that this is going to sustain the town of Whitman's budget till 20.
I think it's 5.
30.
2029, we're working on 2025. It would be 2030 that we would see
5 years.
relief.
That's a long time to limp along with no operational override in my mind.
It's been said that we need an operational override for years.
Right.
We just passed a Whitman Middle School. We just passed a DPW. We have a VOTEC looming. And now to do a 5-year operational override on top?
It's a sustainable course of action.
She just-
It's not easy. It's not something that's easy to be sold to the taxpayer. But in reality, it's like the only thing we can consider to get us to 5 years beyond today.
To put that all together now, there's not enough time. You have to, that is quite a,
Well, this year's budget at the schools at 5%, we'll be very close to what we want it to be. But obviously, we want a bit more on the town side, but
And then the capital, we're deferring capital, right? And we're cutting the budgets to the point where there's no free cash that we're going to be looking at for capital expenditures next year, right? So how is that sustaining us for 5 years? I don't understand how that projection can work.
Yeah, it's not
I'm
funny.
going to go to Rosemary and then.
Okay, everybody has just said what I just said. You pointed out, how are we going to get an override because with all of these components? So all you're doing is putting all the damage on children. That's all you're doing with this. All you're doing is saying, if the schools get what they need, right, which they're asking for what they need. He's not asking for something spectacular. Or maybe he can cut back on some things, but you're guaranteeing a failure for the override, particularly because it has to go through 3, and after this override's done, keep in mind, 2.5, it doesn't necessarily have to go to the schools next year. So it's not even an override for schools because 2.5 just raises and that money pools in the levy, in that levy. So it doesn't make a difference. It's always really just an operational override. No matter which way we want to dress it up, ultimately the next year, it's just an operational override. We're using it. We saw that with the fire. We used fire override money the next year. We didn't even get the positions that we presented right away. We waited years. So we know that this is an operational override no matter what we dress it up as. When we dress it up as a school override, it has to go through 3 different components. It has to be passed by the school committee. Then it has to be passed by 2 different towns. And you narrow the group that are interested. Narrow the group. So what you're doing is having the majority vote for the minority needs. That's our job, is to do it diversely. It's a
I'm
mistake.
going to go to Kathleen and then to you.
And I'll be.
And I want to say it's 9:30, so
I know, I
we've
haven't
done
had
what we've done.
dinner,
So, yeah.
Yeah.
We should have snacks next
I
time.
watched, I believe it was the March 12th Hanson Select Board meeting where John Madden, made a presentation, and I listened to him. And what he said makes perfect sense. His recommendation to the town of Hanson was that they run a $5 million operational override, not meaning that they're going to spend another $5 million in fiscal 25, but raise the levy limit $5 million, and that gives you 5 years of careful budgeting. You know that in fiscal 20, maybe you reach the $5 million mark, but it gives you maneuvering room. I've been on this committee for 5 years, and every year it's the same story. It's the same story, the same song. There's nothing different, and I sound like George Farrow, but I'm not the George Farrow fatalist. This doesn't have to be. This town, yes, override is an ugly word, but this town needs to consider the long-term need for raising the levy limit. And with all due respect, Mary Beth, I don't think I can hold my breath 5 years and pay off the unfunded pension liability, and then in 5 years, then we'll have some money. That we're going to have problems next year, the year after, and the year after that. And I will stop.
Okay, we'll let Mary Beth and Sean Kane, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Hanson is not putting a $5 million override on this year, not even considering it. They will put on an override.
Okay, John, hold on 1 second, please.
They will put an override if that comes to be with the schools and with the town this year for the money they need over their 5% or whatever they did. So they're looking at the same exact thing. Does that say school override in that article?
Yeah.
Whitman Hanson Regional School
Right.
District.
Yes.
It doesn't say this is a school
Expense,
override,
yeah.
but that's exactly how it read. For the difference, saying over 5% up to the 11.03 that they're requesting. So that's exactly.
So it talks about adding it to budget line 21, which is the Whitman Hanson Regional School
Correct.
District operating
Right,
expense.
and that's
Yeah.
exactly how it was approved by council. I'll have it all approved by council if this goes forward. Like I said, I threw this in even before I met with the school
If it goes
on
forward
Monday.
by the school committee, are you saying?
Well, no, it's the Board of Selectmen that determine whether or not there is an override. But I know the school committee is meeting next week, and so we'll see what comes of their meeting.
Okay, that's John.
just quickly, you said for as long as you can remember in Whitman, it's been this way. That changes if the school enrollment stabilizes. As soon as the school enrollment stabilizes and we're out of hold harmless, then the major pressure that the town is under gets lifted, and the whole conversation changes. And I think we're very close to that point. If that happens next year, then the conversations that we have won't be, the schools are asking for more than 5%, and they're pulling, the schools would be funded more from the state, and it changes the nature of our discussion. You know, one of the things we've been tainted by is 11 years of this long, slow, declining enrollment, which has put this incredible burden on the town.
Right.
If that changes, it changes the conversation.
MBTA
Good point.
community
Yep, let's go to John.
So,
John Noon.
John, and then let's go home.
Okay.
just,
We
Two
can-
things, well, a couple, more than a couple. I lived through Barbara Anderson and Proposition 2.5 when it first came in. There was no provision to get around 2.5. She made sure of that. So everybody was held to 2.5. Not, we will give the employees a 2.5% raise in steps and whatever, and then we will give them a raise over and above that. That's what's happening in the town. I counted 12, maybe 13 people making $97,000 or more a year in salary. This is not necessarily a schools only responsibility for being in the mess we're in. They are an excellent punching bag because when it comes to them, the concept of an override and that their budget being out of whack, they were clueless on.
Okay.
I don't know. I would support some form of an override. But I would also want somewhere in the language that if we vote something and the town of Hanson refuses to go along with it, like some of these articles that we've had in the past, where we voted money and they haven't voted their share, I don't want to see us being hung up on a big chunk of money going to the schools that is not equally or at least in fair share coming from the town of Hanson.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit. Yeah.
so,
So, yeah, we're on the same page with that.
I think he's talking about the assessment.
Somewhere there,
Oh.
rather than after the fact saying, like we have in the past, whoopsie, we should have held them, or we should have had a provision in, so that we could back out of making a commitment that the other town is not going
Oh.
to keep up with.
So you are talking about the assessment, not about capital articles.
Yeah, he's talking about John. Just quickly, are you talking about pretty much Hanson the assessment in terms of like we were asked to pay $500,000, and I find it hard. I'm going to find it really hard to walk up to anybody in this town. When just 4 years ago, most of the people on the Board of Selectmen, nobody on the Finance Committee did this that I remember, maybe one or two, but nobody that's here now, and asked us to give a wealthier town $500,000.
To the schools.
Well, no, it was to benefit, utilize our aid we got aid that determined our wealth index, and they didn't get as much because they were wealthier.
So
And
we're talking about the 2.5 override.
So this is it. Maybe part of this is we go in and we
At the
negotiate.
time, I certainly would not have supported that.
I know, John.
What I'm saying now is, this is not a schools-only issue.
It isn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Your point's well taken. I think everybody's
The
made.
last times we looked at the town budget, it was $1.1 million out of whack. Now, it's obviously somewhere along the line, it's come back down, so that, it's a little over 100,000 that needs to be taken care of. But what did we lose out of that million that I know was somewhat of a wish list from the town departments, but it shouldn't get to the finance committee as a wish list. It should get what they need, what the selectmen approve, what the town administrator is comfortable with. Not a situation where Oh, that was their whim. Now we're getting into the serious stuff.
So-
And we spent all the time meeting with these groups, and they presented a budget that basically, ultimately, is $1.1 million over what the town can afford. We wasted all those meetings with those boards. For what? To be told that somewhere in the selectman's office, the necessary cuts and adjustments are going to be made. And then we're going to point to the schools and say, well, they're really out of whack. And I'll be honest with you, yeah, I think they can make some cuts. But I think everybody needs to take a piece of the blame pie at this point and own up to where we sit.
I agree with you, John.
Move forward. That's
Yep.
all I have to say.
Very good. All right, I think we're all in agreement that, both sides have to take a step towards the middle, I think.
Well, we cut a ton. I mean, we
Right.
cut a ton from the town budgets. That's why we're down to where we're down to.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, if in fact we're not going for this override, right, we still need to get these town departments to subscribe to something reasonable for a budget, right? Not losing 3 people, but somewhere between what was submitted and where they should end up is somewhere in the middle.
And
of
a
that.
lot of the departments submitted their wish list.
Yeah.
And so when they came in, they came to you and they came to me. That's what they didn't listen to my directive.
Right.
No, they didn't.
So that's why we have the huge numbers at first.
Right.
And then I just
Right.
It'd be
I
nicer
looked
if
at
they listened to you.
24 Right, I looked at 20,
from the
so I
get-go.
looked at 24 year to date on every single line and every single department. I looked at 23 expend and 22 expend, and I made adjustments from there.
Well, we
based on
appreciate
that.
the work that you did because it took us a long way. So,
Welcome to budgeting.
all right, and thank you all for your input. Let's
Yeah.
wrap this up. Thank
home
you
and
very
eat.
much.
Thank
Thank you, all 3 of you for coming.
Overrides are for growth. Overrides are for when you grow a budget. We should have gotten an override for when we got the extra person at IT. We should have gotten an override. Overrides are when you add people, not when you sustain. And when it's sustainable, it's operational. I know, but that's really what you're supposed to be doing. So when they're saying that cushion room for the flexibility of sustainability is gone
Still running?
when you add an extra staff member.
All right, let's wrap this up, please.
Yeah,
It's gone on a little long. We do have 3 more meetings. At least we had the opportunity to get through the draft of the warrant, so at least we got a first pass on that. I suspect we'll probably be adding Thursdays to our weekly meetings after next week. If we don't get a compromise from the schools, my hope is that there's another assessment forwarded to the town and we can look at some kind of a negotiation, as Kathleen said, similar to last year, where we can take one-time money. But if we're not looking, I'm going to say this again, just because I think everybody seems to have their own idea how this is going to correct itself. But sustainability is when you look out 5 years. Right now,
past 5 years.
nothing of this
Forward 5
is
years.
looking at 5 years from now. An operational override is the only way, and I know Mary Beth is adamant about not having an operational override, but I think other towns are making the hard decisions that they have to make. And I have to think that the people in the town realize that in order to have a sustainable budget, they got to reach in their pocket, mindful of the capital projects that are coming, that we deferred. We have no one to blame but ourselves for the fact that we have a spike in the capital.
We made a request. I made a request for 5 years back, growth in departments. I made it many meetings ago. We have not received that. Right? If we're going to be making recommendations for a contingency budget, we have to understand where the growth really happened. John did a great job at giving the example, growth in salaries, growth in, those should be expected within your 2.5. But when you add individuals, when you're literally growing your department to expand into a new realm, you're supposed to do the override then.
Okay.
So
So one of the other things that we should take a look at is the Article 2 that was distributed at the Selectmen's meeting. Are we in agreement with where these cuts are made? If not, let's talk about our own ideas about, are we talking about taking 3 firefighters or 2 policemen? Or do we want to, start right at, the first budget and start looking at, at positions within other departments? So it's something to think about. A lot of work to do. Anybody else? Closing? John?
Not too long.
John, anything else?
About the warrant?
Don't invite me, Rick.
Yeah. Do we have new business or the new?
No subcommittee
It's
reports.
10 minutes of 10.
And just quickly, we did have a meeting today. We did have a meeting with the assessors today, and
Yeah.
they
It's
have.
not really on the agenda, so we'll have to bring it up.
Can you put it on the agenda next time, please?
Yeah, we will.
Because that's important. It has to do with revenue.
Are we
All right.
going to, when's the point where we as a committee going to start looking at those? Are we going to, as you said, start looking down that piece and saying, we get a vote, a finance committee for maybe 2 of these options, or I think we kind of need to start doing that.
Yeah, the contingency budget. He's
Well,
right.
usually we get this is the order that it usually goes in. I mean, there's last minute negotiations with the school committee to get a final number on the assessment, and then we fill in, right, with the Article 2, right? But you're right. I think we really should look at an override filling and looking at this Article 2 and making the cuts necessary to balance the budget.
Yeah.
You have a copy of this on
I have an Excel spreadsheet.
Excel, so we can total up as we go.
Just
Yes.
go.
All right.
And so we're gonna compose. Mary
It's-
Beth did a
it's-
contingency budget, but we'll compose our own.
Well, we should look at it.
Yeah.
Right? Again, our job is to look
Line
at
by
it
line.
financially and fiscally.
And we go back to our meetings that we had with departments to base our recommendations on the information that we got, right?
I'm gonna need the growth of the last 5 years to accurately do this, because I'm
I
not
actually
gonna.
generated it, so I'll send it to you.
Thank you, because that's what's gonna make me do it. I appreciate that. I mean,
I don't wait for people to do stuff.
This came electronically too, Mary Beth, so you have this.
Years. We shouldn't have
She
to do
has.
this stuff.
But I want the information, and I know I'm not going to get it, so I do it.
I love you, but it's
All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Ralph, second.
Voice vote?
Here we go, voice vote. We'll start with John Noon.
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Rosemary.
Yeah.
Chuck,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you, Elizabeth.
ciao.